And, well, I'm just going to be honest with you guys, okay? We're struggling a little bit here this morning. If you're watching on the stream, you're probably noticing that we're still bundled up a little bit. And that's because we walked into our venue here, and the heat wasn't working.
Yeah, unlike the song,
Yeah,
the heat is off.
it is. Yeah, it is not on.
The heat is off.
Good news is on the restaurant portion of the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill,
It's nice and warm.
the heat is on. So when
the heat is on.
when they open up at 11 for lunch, you'll be good to go over there. Unfortunately, because we're in a different bay of the area here, our heat is not working to the same degree. Now we've opened it up a little bit, trying to get a little warm air in here, but yeah, that's what's going on. That's why we're wearing coats. That's why I'm wearing a beanie. And Shane is freezing his took us off over there.
Yeah, I walked through the doors this morning.
Yeah, it's not good.
Because normally you pull open the big double doors to get into our venue side, and you get smacked in the face by this heat wave, and you're just like on a day, or I guess on weeks like we've been having, that's the best feeling in the entire world. And I walk in, and I get smacked with frigid temperatures. And all I could think of, it's cold AF. It's cold AF.
It certainly is. I believe it was like 50 degrees when Andrew rolled in here. So that's
52.
Don't
me. Sell the venue side short.
That's true. They're warming us up over here.
And then when I opened up all the doors, which if you walked in, it's kind of like if you took water damage in your house.
Yeah.
Like all the box
and you're trying to like air
moving.
everything out. Yeah.
So I'm trying to bring the heat over from the other side, and it's gone up 2 degrees.
It has. So hopefully by the end of the show, we'll be at a balmy 55, and we'll be good to go here. But I do want to. We've got TK chiming in on Twitter or on the YouTube stream already. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube if you don't watch us on the video stream. And he says, "Good morning, fellas. All hail Nostra Lulla." I believe that's in relation to my Glenn Thomas prediction, which finally came through yesterday,
which is a huge deal. And I think not enough people are making it a big deal when it should be.
So I want to put that in context for people here, right? Because I think, and I don't know this for sure, okay? I was pretty certain that Glenn Thomas was coming here, and I think I've been saying that for almost a month now. It's been a minute. I believe, and I had some information on that. So that wasn't just a prediction. I had some information there.
Are you telling me we shouldn't trust you, young grasshopper?
No, you should trust me. I mean, I got it right? It's better than being sourced is better than just guessing.
I don't know. I guessed about Rule, and that went pretty well for me.
That did go well. What I think happened, and this kind of goes to your point of how big of a deal Glenn Thomas is. First of all, you're getting an NFL quality quarterback coach, which
no big deal
matters, right? The other thing is, I feel like if I look at the timing of what I knew and when I knew it, I look at the timing of what changed with Dylan Raiola, I feel like the Glenn Thomas situation and the Dylan Raiola situation have some ties together. And what I mean by that is I believe Rule when he says, Dylan just called me and said, "Hey, I'm my heart's with Nebraska. I want to take another look." And I believe when he says that. What I also believe is when DB tells me, "Hey, like they were doing their due diligence. They were checking in on things." I know that like Dylan was talking with Caleb and being like, "Hey, what's it really like up there?" And Dom was talking with DB and being like, "Hey, what are these guys really like?" And all the things that you do when you're trying to make a big decision, right? One of those things I have to believe was being like, "Hey, what's the situation with the quarterback's coach?" And if my timing in terms of what I knew is correct, I have to believe that Dylan Raiola maybe wasn't given a name, but was said, "Hey, we have a guy who is coaching in the NFL right now that will be our quarterback's coach next year." And I think that maybe wasn't the reason Dylan Raiola committed, but I think that's one of those things that can give you a comfort level with the situation because and you did a TikTok on this yesterday. I don't know, have they posted that yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so you did
It'll be posted this morning.
So there'll be a TikTok to kind of summarize what we're talking about here this morning with the quarterback situation. But Marcus Satterfield was never intended to be the quarterback coach at Nebraska. That wasn't the role that Rule was hiring him for. Now, he ended up having to put him in that role because some other things fell through, namely Jake Peets, who was supposed to come over from the Rams, Nebraska native. He was supposed to be the quarterback's coach. Sean McVay made a hard push to keep Jake Peets. He got a
pretty sweet deal there.
He did, yeah, and they really wanted him, and so he stayed there. And Marcus Satterfield kind of stepped into a role that, yes, he has coached quarterbacks before. That's generally not his role on offense. It just isn't. So to have that settled, I think, was a big part in making Dylan Raiola comfortable with his decision.
And Glenn Thomas instantly slots up as the most important hire by this Nebraska staff because he's tasked with the most important responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that's developing the top recruit in program history.
Absolutely.
So that's why I don't want to undersell this moment.
No, it's huge.
And why I feel it should be getting more hype, because I don't think people have realized that, hey, if Dylan Raiola doesn't perform like he's intended to, who does that fall on?
Mm-hmm.
And that can't just fall on Coach Rule, because he did his due diligence in recruiting the top recruit in the country.
Absolutely.
Right? It's all about who develops him, and that's Glenn Thomas. So the pressure's on. It's not going to be an easy task for Thomas, but if and when that works out, you see instant upgrade in this Nebraska offense because of Dylan Raiola's play. If you see him up to the college game speed by the first snap this season, or at least within the first 3 non-conference games this season,
mm-hmm.
then hats off to Glenn Thomas. And he'll be around for a little while, or he'll at least be around as long as he wants to be around.
Yeah,
because he worked this thing. He worked this thing up so that Dylan Raiola is ready to go for this program for the next 4 or 5 years. The other point to this too, you mentioned Satterfield, and yeah, you don't want to give him the entire blame, but it still didn't look good last year, and you have to remember that. Passing efficiency numbers, Nebraska was 129th of 133 teams.
That's bad.
That's not good.
That's very bad.
That's not good. And it's easy. It's very easy to get a better score than that this next year, even if results were the same, right? Even if it was Heinrich Harburg and Chubba Purdy in the room, the likelihood of going 129th again
mm-hmm.
is probably low. I mean, could you? Sure.
Yeah.
But when you bring in a guy like Dylan Raiola, that number goes away. Like you can kind of already get out of the hundreds and know that you're going to have 2 digits next to your team stat in that category.
So, and I don't want to put all that blame on Marcus Satterfield, right? Obviously, the quarterback situation last year was a mess.
But I don't think he went about it very well whenever he was pressed in those pressure moments,
sure.
Those in-game moments. And not to say that when he went up to the booth, he abandoned his quarterbacks on the sidelines, because that's not true either.
Right.
Like they were mixing things up, and maybe he felt more comfortable in the booth. And, because he's not used to, well, that's not true, because he did do some things with Spencer Rattler at South Carolina.
Yep.
But because, he wasn't expected to know these guys right away and get to know them. And then he, especially as the offensive coordinator, you kind of get thrown into spots of most need. And when Nebraska went out and hired Wager,
mm-hmm.
he took over for the tight ends right then and there. Well, the biggest area of need is quarterbacks coach. Well, if you don't have room on your staff for that kind of just goes into the tool belt of the offensive coordinator, just because.
Yeah, the problem with that, though, is quarterbacks are too important to just be kind of a throw on.
I couldn't agree more.
And
I could not agree more.
And you look at a guy like Satterfield, which he has coached quarterbacks in the past, but his last stop with Rule at Baylor, he was just the tight ends coach. He wasn't even the offensive coordinator. But like I think you have to kind of put it in 2 baskets here, right? So part of what we saw from the quarterbacks last year, I was putting on Satterfield because it seemed like we saw the same mistakes at all 3 guys, right? In terms of passing the ball, it's like hey, we saw these mistakes from Sims. We saw these mistakes from Harburg. We saw these mistakes from Purdy. All right. And so that I put on Satterfield. That's when I started to say, hey, maybe we need an independent QB coach, because at first it's like, hey, there's a bunch of injuries. There was no way to know that Jeff Sims was going to get the yips, basically, in terms of turning the ball over. There was no way to know any of that, right? But when they start making the same mistakes across every guy in that room, that's when I was like, okay, you probably need somebody specifically for quarterbacks. And so I kind of put those in two different categories. So part of that number of there being, was it 129 in passing efficiency? Part of that is the situation he was dealt with, the quarterbacks and the injuries and the Jeff Sims yips, whatever it was. And part of that is probably he wasn't able to give his full focus to coaching quarterbacks,
and
because he's the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's just not. And this is Glenn Thomas's strength. So if Dylan Raiola is showing not all of the same issues, but some of those issues early on, Glenn Thomas can immediately address those and know the best course of action. Satterfield just didn't know what route to take, because all three quarterbacks, well, all two, and then when Chuba came in, it was kind of a roller coaster ride with him. But the two top quarterbacks on this team were showing the same things. Like, yes, Sims had the yips, but he was turning the ball over and couldn't hold on to the football. Well, if you think back to what happened in the spring, Satterfield was coaching these guys how to take snaps. Like, that is the most beginner stage.
It's the most basic.
And you're doing that in college? Like, these things aren't figured out yet, and this is where you're starting with these guys? If he had to start there, no wonder you saw some of the problems that you did this season. They just weren't fully there and fully capable to succeed. But Satterfield didn't know how to address it when things went south, and they went south fast.
Yeah, and that's something that I think you can have more confidence in Glenn Thomas in doing. This is something, I mean, he's been a quarterbacks coach for most of his coaching career, going all the way back to Midwestern State back in the early 2000s. That's where he got his start, was quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator. He was a quarterbacks coach with the Falcons, helped kind of mentor Matt Ryan. That was the same time.
Good?
He ended up being pretty good. That was the same time period that he was there in Atlanta. Then obviously he went with Coach Rule to Temple in 2015. He's been a quarterbacks coach basically his entire career.
And that was PJ Walker.
Yeah, it was PJ Walker at Temple. Then he
was
with Charlie Brewer at Baylor, where he was the co-offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. This is what he does. This is what Glenn Thomas does. Unequivocally, this is what the guy does. And so it is a upgrade in terms of position coach for sure. The other thing that it does is it opens up opportunities for you if Satterfield still can't get it done in terms of being the offensive coordinator and play caller, because that's a role that Glenn Thomas has done in the past. You've got somebody on staff, Coach Rule talks about all the time with his players, coaching himself into options. Well, he's doing it with his coaching staff too. He's coaching himself into options. Last year, if he wanted to move on from Marcus Satterfield as the play caller at some point in season, he would have had to do it himself, or he would have had to hand it over to an analyst or a grad assistant. Probably not something he wanted to do. And taking it on himself is a lot when you're trying to build the culture of a program.
Yeah, when you're still pouring the foundation.
Yeah, I think once maybe you've got it going a little bit, that's something you could take on. But I didn't love it when Scott Frost was calling plays here at Nebraska, because there's too much to do as the head coach to also be the offensive coordinator and be able to do both well. Now, once you've got it going a little bit, maybe that's something you could take on. But it gives you an option if Marcus Satterfield isn't getting it done as the play caller, as the offensive coordinator. That's something that you can shift over to Glenn Thomas and be like, hey, this is something I know you can do. This is something that you've done for me before at both of my stops. Let's do this again. I think that's certainly an option. The other thing that we have to kind of rolls into this whole situation is the Dana Holgorsen part of it all, right? What I've been told about Dana Holgorsen is that his involvement would be as an analyst. That's kind of what I had been told all along. I know some people kind of wanted him in that co-OC role, and that we should have a decision in the next couple weeks. Apparently, they kind of just left the ball in Dana Holgerson's court. I'm wondering if there's like a February 1st buyout date number for Dana Holgerson, where maybe some of his money goes from being yearly to a lump sum. You never, with Houston, a lot of times when you have like, oh, we're going to wait until this date, that's usually what's happening there. But for the people that were kind of hoping that Dana Holgerson would be an OC, co-OC, or a quarterback coach, analyst seems to be the place that makes the most sense. That is, and when you hear kind of some of his comments last year about, he seems kind of like he's kind of over the recruiting thing a little bit. Analyst makes a little bit more sense for him. Maybe let him recharge his batteries a little bit. He can't go out on the road to recruit anyway, but you still get to pick his offensive mind and get the benefit of having Dana Holgerson in the room without having this liability in terms of this guy who's not that interested in recruiting.
It's the same benefit that you get from Glenn Thomas if things don't work out with Marcus Satterfield.
Yeah, you've got another option, right? You've coached yourself.
You're just covering your bases
into options. Matthew on the YouTube stream asked what this guy's history is. He's been with Rule a lot. He was with the Falcons before that, as we mentioned, as a quarterback coach. He just was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a professional quarterback coach. Like, that's what he is. He's a professional level quarterback coach. I mean that in the sense of that's what he's an expert in, and in the sense of he's done it at the NFL level for, I think, a total of like 6 years.
And think about this too. The Steelers didn't look fantastic this year at the quarterback position, but they also used a carousel of individuals, kind of like Nebraska did last season. And he still managed to help get the Steelers in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You start with Kenny Pickett, and it just didn't go.
Not how you wanted it to go.
Great. Now, some injury problems happened there too, but then they move over to Mitchell Trubisky, and that also was just kind of like, that'll fizz out. Then you end in with Mason Rudolph in the playoffs. You're starting Mason Rudolph. Yeah. Like, this is somebody that had to go through so many different people in one season that think about if he could just stick with that one guy.
Well, and it also is kind of encouraging to me because, okay, if Nebraska had been able to weather their quarterback carousel last year the way Pittsburgh did, then we're talking about a bowl game this year as opposed to talking about, man, they lost their last 4. They missed a bowl game again. You know, that's what Glenn Thomas was able to do in that spot, despite less than ideal circumstances.
He understands what Nebraska was put through last season. So even if something like that were to happen again, Glenn Thomas has the knowledge of how to navigate those situations.
Yeah, he's got some experience there going through it with the Steelers this year. So Glenn Thomas is your new quarterback coach at Nebraska. I'm sure we will talk more about that kind of throughout the coming days and weeks because, you know, we're getting into that time where there's not a lot else to talk about. So,
well, there's another Big Ten quarterback that entered the transfer portal that won't be playing this next season. Yeah. And, you know, I texted you about this last night because I thought it was hilarious how the NCAA kind of just said no.
Yeah, makes their decision.
Who was in Talia Tagovailoa's back pocket to give him that extra year of eligibility, and that was Nick Saban and Alabama and some big names there that submitted. I don't know if they were like written.
Yeah, so they wrote letters.
Yeah, okay. They wrote letters. So they submitted some letters to try to get Talia an extra year of eligibility, and I laughed out loud when I was reading the article because Alabama's the reason he doesn't have that extra year. Yeah. And so it's just funny to me how, like, is this like your way of trying to make it right?
Yeah.
Like, make the world right? Like, you screwed this guy over. You guys absolutely screwed him over because you couldn't track when he took snaps and how many games he appeared in.
Yeah. I mean, I get that for sure. I don't know with Nick Saban how much I don't know how much at Alabama they care about that, because most of the time, if you're a good true freshman,
you're gonna put him in 5 games and let him play 2 snaps in 2 of those games.
Listen, they put him in a bad spot, and I'm guessing that's what the letter said, was that, hey, this is on us, not him. We put him in a bad spot. We didn't, I'm guessing that's what the letters were about.
Rules are rules, and that's what the NCAA came back with and said, you guys just can't get your wish
count.
Because you're the ones that screwed up.
Yeah. And I also have to put this on the NCAA a little bit, because it's like, okay, they've given exceptions for dumber reasons. Like they give their exceptions. That's the problem that I have with this situation is, yes, should Alabama have been able to count to 4 correctly? Yeah, that would have been ideal. But also the NCAA gives exceptions seemingly at random. Like there's really no rhyme or like if you look at some of the guys that have gotten exceptions, like I don't know why Casey Thompson has a 7th year. I don't understand it. I don't get it. And that's nothing against Casey Thompson. I don't understand his case for it at all. I don't understand basically anybody's case that has gotten the 7th year of eligibility, or even a lot of the 6th years of eligibility, like Talia Tagovailoa is looking for. I get that at the end of the day, it's on Bama. It's on that situation to be able to count to 4 correctly. And that doesn't seem like a big ask, and I get it. But it kind of just brings up this bigger issue that frustrates me about the NCAA, where it's like, yeah, on one day they feel like giving out some waivers. On the next day, they're like, no more waivers. Like, what harm does it do if you are giving a 6th year to Tagovailoa, but you're okay giving a 7th year to Casey Thompson?
Well,
like that's
it's just a different way of writing that law in the rule book. It's if you get injured, you'll be okay.
I guess maybe they should have faked an injury from back in 2019.
I swear when he took that snap against Duke, he just wasn't healthy.
It's like, he got banged up, otherwise he would have played more. It's it's kind of a dumb way to go about things. You feel for Tagovailoa a little bit, but at the same time, I don't know that going somewhere else next year would improve his draft stock. I kind of think he is who he is at this point.
Depends on where he lands. Maryland's not a great
but it's not
a great spot to really showcase your skills because you don't have the crazy skill options that some of the bigger programs
have. But it's
have.
not like he didn't put up numbers. He's the Big Ten's all-time leading passer.
Yeah, he's a fantastic player, but think about how inflated his numbers could be if he was surrounded by maybe somebody that isn't a 3-star, but a 4-star or a 5-star. And, you go to Miami before Cam Ward got to Miami, because this process could have been sped up for Talia if the NCAA really wanted it to. He could have ended in Miami. He would have been around his brother. He would be training with his brother down in Miami, and boom, think of where Miami is in the recruiting rankings.
I just don't think an extra year does anything for his draft stock. I really don't. Coming up, though.
If he can inflate his stats at Maryland, he can definitely do that around some top-end skill players.
Yeah, but that doesn't change who he is as a quarterback. Coming up, we've got quite a bit to get to today. We'll set up the show coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube if you want to watch the video stream. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
Good morning.
We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, where it is now a balmy 56 degrees in our venue. Don't worry, it is full heat over in the bar and restaurant side of things. So if you want to come in later for lunch or dinner, you should be good to go. And we have been told that our heroes are on the way. The HVAC people are on the way. So
I feel like a penguin.
A little bit.
All right. Shane.
Call me Mr. Popper.
We have a good show for you coming up here. At 8 o'clock, we'll talk to Brian Christopherson, a Husker 24/7. At 8:30, we've got Andy Kendeigh, our friend from KETV. At 8:45, we're going to preview Creighton and UConn. Creighton trying to beat the number 1 team in the country for the first time in their history. Dom Amore for the Hartford Current covers UConn. He will join us at 8:45, and then 9 o'clock.
Like a G League basketball team, the Hartford Current.
It does. His name sounds like he's a mafia don. Dom Amore, like that.
Either that or the leading scorer of the Current.
He may be. Coming up at 9, we've got Anna Bellinghausen from Hurrdat Sports. We'll talk a little bit more college basketball with her, as well as play some trivia.
Mm-hmm. We're going to do a little bit of the NFL slate too. She's a Vikings fan, so I'm sure she didn't like seeing Green Bay and Detroit win this past weekend.
I'm sure she's very happy about that. The trivia game, though, there's prizes for you folks available.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I need to log into the account so I can get the tickets out to people.
Yes, so we have tickets for the Omaha Supernovas. Their opening match against the Atlanta Vibe is January 24th. Basically, all you have to do is call in at sometime between 9 and 9:30. So once Anna comes on the show before 9:30, give us a call on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. That's 888-638-4876.
And if you do call in,
Bring the heat.
Thank you, Shane. Go ahead and call in and give Shane your name and contact information, and then you will pick either Anna or myself to win the trivia game. If you pick the correct winner, you will win tickets to the Omaha Supernovas. So that's coming up at 9:30 as well. But before we get to all that, I want to make sure we touch on a really important game tonight for Nebraska men's basketball against Rutgers. They have a road trip out to Piscataway, and it is I don't want to say must win on January 17th, but it's a really important game for Nebraska here. Rutgers is not special this year. It's a tough place to play, don't get me wrong, but they're not special. It is a game that if you think you're an NCAA tournament team, it's a game that you need to win.
You have to win it.
This is a team resume-wise that is very similar to Minnesota. They're 93rd in KenPom. Minnesota's 92. Now, Minnesota's got a better record. But in terms of quality of who they've played and everything, them and Rutgers, this is basically the same game.
Yeah, it's a tough atmosphere to play in Piscataway as well. That may be one of the hardest arenas to play in all of college basketball. Now, the Scarlet Knights have dropped 3 of their last 4. So as Ravi said, they're not taking over the world.
Yeah, they're not playing great basketball
in college
right now.
basketball, no. But they are still 2.5-point favorites at home tonight.
Nebraska's
against the Nebraska team that is borderline ranked. That's a pretty alarming number for me. And as somebody that takes a sports betting approach when I think about lines, I then have to dig into, okay, so how have they been straight up at home? How have they been, in true home games this season? Well, Rutgers is 7-9 ATS in 12 of their last 16. That doesn't get me excited about this 2-point number in favor of Rutgers. But last time out, they didn't play well against Michigan State. Michigan State bested them in almost every category, which was field goal percentage. They shot 37 to 45%, 3-point shooting around 40%. They won in turnovers, and they won in the rebound margin as well. And look, they shot 48% from 3, and Nebraska's the best 3-point shooting team in the Big Ten. At least they were a week ago. That could have fluctuated. They could be 2 or 3 on that list now, but they were the best 3-point shooting team in the Big Ten. If Michigan State can put up 48% on Rutgers, Nebraska can too. But here's what I want to say about Nebraska and why it's really important that they win this game. Because you can't forget that Nebraska has had a pretty easy schedule up to this point. It's been cake. You look at their non-con, and then you look at the games that they've lost in the Big Ten, but also have played in the Big Ten. Outside of Purdue and Wisconsin, they haven't really played anybody. Iowa, we talked yesterday, is kind of that borderline. Yeah. Are they good? Are they not?
Michigan State's starting to play better, but when Nebraska played them, they were struggling.
In KenPom's rankings, in terms of toughest schedule, strength of schedule, SOS, if you are searching that now, the Cornhuskers have played the 355th toughest schedule in the country. For reference, there's 362 teams in college basketball.
It's pretty bad.
Which means they've had an easy ride up to this point.
Yeah.
But they're still 1-3 in true road games. And that's where that's kind of that pit in your stomach that you're thinking about as this team heads to Piscataway. Can they figure it out on the road? They've done a great job at home. They've done a tremendous job finding ways to win at home, but now it's time to do it on the road.
So KenPom basically has this as a coin flip. He thinks Nebraska wins 70-69 based on the metrics there, which is it's a 53% win probability, that's a coin flip game. Basically anything in the 40s and 50s percentage-wise, basically anything from 41% to 59%, I call a coin flip game because that's generally how the KenPom numbers work out for it. So this is a coin flip game for Nebraska, but it's one they absolutely need to win if they have NCAA tournament hopes. I mean, you mentioned their strength of schedule. Listen, they don't have a bunch of world beaters out there left on the schedule either. It gets harder, right? It does get harder, but this isn't, you've got obviously Wisconsin and Illinois out there left on the schedule. Outside of that,
yeah, Michigan's not what they were.
No, you've got a bunch of teams between 50.
What they have been, I should say.
Yeah, you've got a bunch of teams between 50 and 100 for the most part. Ohio State's right at that 50 mark, depending on the day and the numbers. And then you've got Rutgers and Minnesota down in the 90s. They have
Penn State in there as well.
Penn State's at 109. That's the lowest.
Who got a big win yesterday against Wisconsin?
Right. Yeah, they did.
But it also shows that in college basketball, any team can win on any given
especially
night.
In the Big Ten. After the, and obviously Nebraska showed this by beating Purdue and then losing to Iowa the next game, right? There is a lot of variance in the Big Ten this year, even with your quote-unquote dominant team in Purdue. I think this is a league that the top and bottom are not very far apart from each other. And so that's an opportunity for Nebraska, right? Because they can beat everybody, but it's also, there's some landmines in there because they can lose to just about everybody too. They're in a very similar place to what we saw with Nebraska football last year. Nebraska basketball is hoping to be able to flip some of those one-score games that Nebraska football lost last year. They're hoping to be on the other side of that this year so they can make an NCAA tournament berth. But make no mistake, that's kind of the margin of error we're talking about here. It's pretty thin for Nebraska basketball. And if you want to be on the right side of that margin of error, you have to win games like Rutgers on the road or Northwestern at home coming up on Saturday. Like these are two, for not being marquee names, these are two really big games for Nebraska.
Well, and if Nebraska ends the season 20-12, which we think that gets them into the NCAA tournament, but say that's a borderline ending for can they get in, can they not? Well, if you're looking at another team, let's just say in the Big Ten, we'll say Michigan State, okay, just for hits and giggles at this point. Michigan State ends the season 18-14, okay? But they win one Big Ten tournament game and they have, we'll just say the 30th best strength of schedule. They're getting in over Nebraska because of those things.
Yes.
So that's why it's uber important for Nebraska to win the games that they need to win at this point in the season, because every win matters, seeing as where they sit in certain categories amongst other college basketball teams.
Well, that's a good guess. 24, I think, is their strength of schedule for Michigan State. So
I pulled that right out of the behind.
That's a good guess there on Michigan State. But yeah, so it's a big game tonight at Rutgers for Nebraska. And then again, these next couple games, if you're Nebraska, you need to be rooting for a couple things. One, you need to beat up on the teams in your neighborhood of the Big Ten, right? You can lose to Wisconsin and Illinois and still make the NCAA tournament. Like the best two teams left on their schedule. They can make the NCAA tournament while losing to those two teams. They need a couple things. They need Purdue to stay really, really good to make that win look better and better and better. They need Michigan State to end up where we thought Michigan State would be at the start of the season. They need Kansas State, who got a big win last night against Baylor. They need Kansas State to keep winning games. That way, they've got quality wins on their schedule, right? That way, they can just win games in their own neighborhood and not have to worry about punching above their weight class in the rest of the schedule. That is coming up at, I believe, 6 o'clock.
That is right.
Against Rutgers for Nebraska. Creighton plays, I believe, at the exact same time at 6 o'clock. You got to have the double TV set up tonight. We'll get to the Creighton.
We have YouTube TV, right?
We will get to that Creighton UConn game later. Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We're live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as well as the video stream on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We've got our frozen popsicle of a producer over there, Shane Schillerberg. He's sitting over by the window, so it's a little colder for him than it is for us. It's still not warm in any section of the but we are up to 57 now. I think we might get to 60 before the show's over.
Yeah, Shane looks like the kid in A Christmas Story. His hood is up. He's got a beanie on. It looks like he has two hoods. He put the ski mask on.
I did put the ski mask on.
So is it below your mouth or is it covering up to your nose? There it is.
Okay. Yeah, if I wasn't speaking, I'd have it up over my nose.
You can speak through those things too, right?
Yeah, it's muffled though. You don't want to.
It's muffled. I mean, that probably doesn't sound that great.
It sounds the exact same. But you can hear yourself speak.
I've got gloves on. I've got a coat on. I've got two sweatshirts on.
Well, you have gloves on, but like the tops of your fingers are coming out. So are they like glove mittens?
Yeah, they're like glove mittens. So I'm trying to do a show like that probably wouldn't work that well.
Well, we're trying to think warm thoughts here, and over are some of our teammates were thinking very warm thoughts yesterday. They were doing the
the hotter ones
challenge. So
I was like, teammates. I was like, are we doing an ad read?
So
teammates down in Nebraska?
Nope. No, our actual teammates here at Hurrdat Sports. So they went out to the new the new restaurant out in Gretna, Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the second location out there, and they were doing a Hotter Ones kind of wing challenge. And it's kind of funny. I feel like we were invited, but I also sometimes I feel like on the radio show, like on the morning show side, we're sort of like the cousins that don't like, we're sort of like the stepchildren of the family.
We get invited to holidays.
Yeah, it's like you're invited like in name only. Okay, like we don't expect you to be there.
Well, I'm more on the family side.
Yes, I'm like an in-law.
Yeah, you married in.
I'm just kind of like, hey, I'm over here, guys. What's up? No, they invited us. I was working my day job, so I couldn't go. And Andrew didn't want to set his mouth on fire. So
yes, I also was thinking about sandpaper TV yesterday and thought, man, can you imagine the Hotter Ones challenge with some sandpaper? Not great.
So we had some teammates that did well. We had some other ones that couldn't hold it down.
Mm-hmm.
I was, first of all, even if I wasn't busy, I probably wouldn't have done it. I'm not a huge like spicy food. Like I don't mind spicy food, but especially on those like hot wings challenges, I feel like there's no flavor to it. It's just hot for the sake of being hot. And I don't enjoy that at all. Like there's, you know what I mean? Like there's some stuff that's spicy, but it has good flavor to it.
Sure.
And then there's other stuff that is just hot and it's so hot you can't taste anything.
It's unbearable.
Yeah.
So at what point?
And not just unbearable, but pointless.
Yeah, but that's what it is. So at what point is something so hot that it's just like, the only reason you're doing this to yourself right now is to see if you can.
Is to see if you can do it.
If you can be the ultimate competitor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're not tasting any of the aromas coming off of that sauce.
There's no flavor.
You're tasting the meat.
It's just hot.
You're just trying to finish the wing.
Yeah.
So, I would take anything hot right now. Anything. Give me anything hot. If it warms me up 10 degrees, I'm taking it.
Yeah, Shane, good one. That was good. That may have been the best thing you've said all week. But no, so you're right, though, because you go and experience food because you like the flavor of food.
Yeah, that's why I like food. I'm not just trying to do it just so I can do it.
Yeah. I'm such a competitor. I would probably do it. If we ran the competition back, I would participate.
You think you'd go again?
Yeah, well, so when we first opened this restaurant, there was a charcuterie board eating challenge. If you guys know what the charcuterie board looks like here at
I would mess that up.
Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. It's the giant pretzel, right? It's got 3 of the sides, and they're all fried. So just imagine like what your insides feel like. I did it with Pat Safford, our director of podcasting, and one of our other guys that work on the agency side. Dude, this guy should be a competitive eater. Aaron, he told me before he started the challenge that every day he eats 2 Subway footlongs.
Oh.
I don't know if he makes them at home or if he actually goes to Subway, but the size of sandwich, like that's his lunch every day. So I'm like, well, you're going to put this thing away, no problem. And he almost did. He almost finished the entire pretzel. I gave it my best shot. I mean, I weigh a whopping 170, and there's not a lot of places that food can go. But Pat and I are struggling through it. And, before we did the eating challenge, we took like a tequila shot and then like we got this tummy feeling all nice, warm and fuzzy. And then we went, I don't know if I do a tequila shot for the Hotter Ones challenge.
No.
But I think that prepared me for moments like this. Now, there's a difference though, because one's a ton of food.
Yeah. I could do that.
It's just the mental side of trying to eat all that food versus like 5 to 10 wings that are hotter than ghost peppers.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to like hot foods in general. It's kind of funny. So,
but I was clogged up for like 7 days after that challenge.
See, I could do that. I'd probably be okay. Like I'd be fine on the charcuterie challenge. I'd be okay.
Ashley was like, "Are you sure you're okay? Like, should we go to the hospital?" I'm like, "No, just don't have to go."
Gotta get some prune juice through there, man.
Yeah, then wait when that 7-day mark hit, and then you finally are like, "Hey, let's release the hounds."
No, I'm a little soft when it comes to like hot foods. I'll admit to it. I used to be better about it. I don't know what happened, but at some point in like my 20s, I was just like, I just don't enjoy this that much. And it's kind of funny though, because so my wife really likes Indian food. I don't so much, which is ironic. She makes fun of me all the time. She's like, I married the one Indian guy who doesn't like Indian food. And so she gets a little salty about that. But so we'll go to restaurants sometimes And
Ravi's like, I'm Russian.
Here's the secret about Indian restaurants, okay? If you're a white person, you go to Indian restaurant, you're not getting the same flavor profile as
unless you know the owner.
Yeah, well, even then, you're not getting the same flavor profile as you are if you're an Indian person that walks into an Indian restaurant. So what happens is we will order each other's food because I want the white people level of spiciness, and she wants the Indian people level of spiciness. And so,
hey, I'm a baby. Give me what you give to my co-host anytime he comes in.
Yeah, no, it's legitimately we go in and we order each other's meals so that I get what I want and she gets what she wants. Because
they're doing like what they do in Friends.
Yes.
And Rachel delivers all the drinks wrong.
Yeah, and then you like, yes, exactly. We swap the plates over and stuff. So like that's the level I'll go to. Because no matter what I do, I will order the same spice level as she does. And mine always will come out hotter every single time. And I'm like, guys, I'm only half Indian, all right?
You're like, guys, stop stereotyping.
My palate I get from my white mother. Like that's where this came from here. So I don't think I would have done well on the Hotter Ones challenge. I don't know. Some of our teammates lost their lunch a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would have
run to the bathroom.
Yeah,
on video.
Yes, yeah. I don't think I would have. I don't think that would have happened to me. I
don't know though because
I don't either.
I've never eaten something of that degree of spice.
Because at some point it's just chemistry, right? Like there's too much acidity in your stomach and it just comes up. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Like I did see one of them just like chugging a gallon of milk in the video.
Yeah, that was before she said she puked and rallied.
Yeah, it's like, and that probably was what it was. It was probably the acid from the hot and the milk mixed together in her stomach.
But then you have Sasha, who's an absolute boss. That's I don't really feel anything. And David also at the very end is just like, yeah, that kind of tasted like a mild chicken wing. And everybody else is just huffing and puffing.
Like sweating and looking like they're on their deathbed. And David and Sasha are just like, I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy.
I would love to see both of them do the one chip.
What's the one chip?
You've never seen the challenge of like the one, like the hottest chip in the world?
No.
Where you like open it. It's literally one chip in this little box.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
I have not seen this.
I would never put that wrath on us as a punishment on this show.
No, that's terrible.
Because you would.
Oh, I'd lose. I'd pass out probably.
Yeah, you wouldn't be with us the next few days.
I'd make Natasha come in and just do it for me.
And then for me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good. But I would love to see them go neck and neck because apparently I think the challenge works like this. You eat the chip and then you can't drink anything for 5 minutes.
Okay.
No water, no milk. And people like really suffer through those moments. If I remember that challenge correct, what is the one chip challenge? The chip is called the Paqui, P-A-Q-U-I.
I've never heard of this.
I can't believe you've never seen this challenge. Even like just scrolling on like TikTok. Have you ever seen like these boxes? It's one chip in this box.
Oh, I've seen that one. I've seen the one that doesn't have the skull on it. I've seen that one.
This bag right here?
Yeah, I've seen that one.
I believe it's the same thing.
It probably is. John on Twitter says heat and food is, and John is he's like a connoisseur of food. He like roasts pigs and all sorts of stuff.
JL, John Livingston?
Yeah, our guy Johnny Pig. That's literally his handle. He says heat and food is such a personal thing. Each person can handle different Scoville units, which is how they measure heat, and still taste food. And you can train yourself for hotter foods. For example, I can taste all the hotter ones except the bomb. That's straight from the devil's butt. So good take there from our guy Johnny Pig. I
don't know.
Yeah,
I will never get as far as Johnny Pig got. But.
No, that is good to know. And so I must be on the light side of, and I just don't care to train myself to do more than that. Is that moving on its own? What's happening here?
I hit it with my laptop.
Okay.
He's looking at the iPad for those that aren't watching on the stream right now. Because when I turned my laptop, I did that.
I feel like I've turned this thing back like 8 times. I'm like, what is going on? Coming up next, we're going to talk to Brian.
Must be that draft.
I would say it's the cold air. That's blowing the iPad, so I can't see how much time we have left. So well done by all of our teammates to do the Hotter Ones challenge. And maybe sometime you'll invite the cousins over to have some fun as well, rather than just at Thanksgiving. No, I'm just kidding. Coming up next, we'll talk to Brian Christopherson from from Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is our friend Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, how are you this morning?
Can't complain. How you guys doing?
Good morning, BC. We're doing okay.
We're a little chilly.
We're a little chilly.
chilly.
Heat, unfortunately, we think went out on us, at least on our studio venue side, which is why we look so bundled up right now. You're probably like, man, take your jacket off. Stay a while. You have a 3-hour show. Yeah, no, can't do that today. But we were just talking about the heat of other things, like the heat of food. We had our Hurrdat Sports team do a Hotter Ones challenge yesterday.
Yeah.
Are you somebody that can handle the heat? Have you ever done a challenge that required you to set your tongue on fire?
I've never competed in such a challenge, but would. I would be in the middle of the pack. Probably basically the equivalent of a 5-7 football team or a 6-6 team. That's what I would be.
How fitting that you cover one of them.
I'll say you're in the right place, BC.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the addition of Glenn Thomas as the quarterbacks coach. It's something that I was convinced was happening for a while.
Right.
What are your initial thoughts? Obviously, he's got a long history with Coach Rule.
Yeah, we don't have to whisper about it anymore, Ravi. We can just say his name like real loudly through the megaphone.
I mean, that could have happened, and people are like, "Are you sure, man?" They're talking to Dana Holgerson. I was like, "I'm pretty sure."
No. I mean, the Holgerson thing, people shouldn't. It's still out there. That all along to me had like, if it's going to happen or if it does happen, it has analyst written all over it. And obviously you can. That's still an achievement and would be a useful voice in the room. But I think this is a really good hire. He's familiar with Matt Rule. They've had success together. He had a lot of success with Charlie Brewer. I just think he's a guy who absolutely fits the template of a Rule staff because he's been on it, knows what to do. And I think it's going to excite the room. I think it's good for Marcus Satterfield too, honestly. Like it allows someone else to to have the heat, I think, that comes with that quarterback spot and coaching it, because I do think there is a lot of attention on it. And he can focus on being the OC and working with the tight ends, it seems like, if this is how it all fits together as it's sort of expected. So this is the puzzle that I expected to be in place kind of the last couple of weeks. And now it feels like we can actually speak on it with certainty, although some of us were kind of feeling that way, I think, all along.
BC, how much, if at all, do you think the speculated addition of Glenn Thomas impacted Dylan Raiola and his ultimate decision to come here? Because I don't know, I heard him at the Polynesian Bowl yesterday after he got interviewed, and I was like, that doesn't sound like somebody who's surprised by this news.
No. I mean, I'm sure the plan, if you were in Dylan Raiola's shoes, you'd want to know, all right, what are you doing going forward? What's it going to look like in my room? Who's going to be the main guy I'm working with every day? And what's the vision? And when it's laid out to you with somebody who's had success like Glenn Thomas has, and been in the NFL ranks, but also knows how Rule operates, that's probably pretty exciting to a young QB. So I have to think, that was a piece of the pie that he enjoyed. I would have to think Danny Kaelin liked it. And I always want to bring Danny Kaelin back to the discussion. I know who the favorite is here and who's going to get talked about the most, but you have another young quarterback that was an Elite 11 guy coming in. So it's got to be exciting for both of them to have that opportunity to work with somebody like that. And it's got to be exciting for Glenn Thomas too. I think that's probably one of the appeals of the job for an outsider coming in, is like, man, I get to work with a guy who is throwing the ball 72 yards at the Polynesian Bowl and has all the tools in the kit that a coach could want. That's pretty exciting, I think, to associate yourself with that talent as it's beginning and see what you can do with it.
BC, you mentioned vision there, and Glenn Thomas maybe under the most pressure right away of any staff member, and that's to get Dylan Raiola developed quickly to handle those day one snaps. Based on how he looks on paper, it doesn't seem like Raiola needs much, but in terms of how people view Glenn Thomas early on, how important is it that Raiola looks ready by the season opener?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's any coach who, if that's your group and you're specifically, targeted with making them better and showing a winning product on the field, of course you want it to look better sooner than later. I think the biggest thing people are going to look at, Andrew, is the turnover number. And if he can be a coach who helps those young guys process the field and how things are developing and know when to say when on a play sometimes too, when you move on to the next down, all those things player and coach are going to be judged on going forward. So the nice thing for both those guys, coach and player, is actually that the turnover number and all that stuff was so ridiculous last year, because that's where it wasn't. So the expectations are like, come on, just bring this down a little bit and let's see what that does to the win-loss total. So I think that's that's not the worst spot to be in. But yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing, is like how quickly can you make these QBs, and that includes a veteran like Heinrich Harburg. Like last year, there were games we looked at where we thought, man, he had that guy there. Like he had Malachi Coleman running free. Like what didn't he see? And hopefully you have a quarterbacks coach that can get through to a quarterback and help him see some things that develop during a play that were missing last fall.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, a Husker 24/7. BC, how much of a factor do you think it is, or if any at all, of the idea that if things maybe don't go well for Satterfield as a play caller, you've got somebody like Glenn Thomas that if you do want to change kind of how that's going, that you have an option now?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's always good to have depth in your coaching room, just like you want on your roster. So I'm sure a head coach deep down thinks about all that stuff. But I would guess Rule, who has a lot of belief in Marcus Satterfield and a relationship that goes way back, is as much as anything just thinking about how those minds all fit together right now this year in a room, and how that's going to help each of them get better, like how they can play off each other. And you have coaches that have worked together in some cases, and so they're going to have a good understanding going in about maybe how the other guy does some things. But yeah, I think that's probably where the head coach is thinking the most about right now. It's just like the immediate future. And not only is this a good situation for the coach coming in, but you feel like he's going to hopefully lift up the guys around him with some ideas and vice versa, and how they're going to play off each other. So I think that's a big part of it. But I mean, your question's a fair one. You always got to think about the long-term situation and have as they say, a good two deep, and that includes your coaching staff, I'm sure.
BC, as if anybody needed to add pre-workout to their coffee this morning, you heard Dylan Raiola say yesterday at the Polynesian Bowl that I think it's about time to wake that sleeping giant up. Realistically, how long do you predict it will take to wake this sleeping giant at Nebraska? Can it be as early as next year?
I am very hesitant to say something like that on the air, just because around here we do spend the off season, and we're still in January, so we're not to that point yet. We're supposed to talk ourselves in. I think they could win 9-10 games. Like, look at it. Don't you see the map that I see and like all that stuff? We're supposed to wait till at least like June to get into that. So I'm not quite ready to get to that point. But I like that he has that ambition. I like that Matt Rule, if you listen to him when he does, pop up on like a random podcast somewhere, and he'll say like, I think we can win quickly. Like he said that last week on a podcast, and so that's his expectation, is that they're going to make a jump, I think. And when I hear him say stuff like that, I have to believe in his mind he's thinking by, I don't know that if it's this year, but it's year 3 maybe, where you're like really in the conversation. I think that's a true hope over there. But also at the same time, getting your guys like Dylan Raiola to buy in with what the other culture tried to set last year. And that's like, all right, just put your foot in front of you today and get better today. And if you do that and then do it the next day, you're going to like where you are when you get to fall camp and all that stuff. And then the other stuff will take care of itself. But I like that Dylan speaks like that. The fans like that he speaks like it. I think his peers will, that he has that sort of those big ideas and wants to be, as he said, a transformational leader. That's something he talked about with Coach Rule and something he wrote down as like what he wants to do here. So all good stuff. But you know what the biggest thing is to me? It's, last week Jamal Banks commits from Wake Forest, and he's a 22-year-old guy. He's been around college football 4 or 5 years. And I asked him about Dylan Raiola, and he's just like, yeah, I mean, he's mature beyond his years. Like, and it's not just in like how he talks and stuff. He sounds like a guy who's been around football his whole life, but also just in his preparation. Like when you watch him, like even on just practice snaps and the depth he gets on his drops and some of the basic stuff, he said he was, very polished for his age and more so than guys who are older. And so I think that's what is going to mean the most from Dylan Raiola is if he goes to, when he comes back from Hawaii, you get in there and you're that guy pushing the sled in the snow with everybody else and all that. And you just show like, I want to be in this. And then you see the footwork and the arm and all that. And guys will get behind you then because they'll say he's putting in the work and I'll follow that.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson here from Husker 24/7. BC, one more thing on football before we kind of switch gears over to basketball with you here. But on having the Nebraska commits at places like the Polynesian Bowl, like the All-American Bowl, places like that, in kind of being on the recruiting scene, how much have you seen that actually make a difference in terms of the exposure of Nebraska being out there and more present in these high-profile high school games?
Not usually. It doesn't make a difference, honestly. I don't think.
Okay.
I think this one's different though. This one's different because Nebraska's never had a player in that position with so much attention from day one, like in the lobby on Sunday, 5 or 6 days before the game, where recruiting guys nationally, our guys are writing stories, and Raiola is like at the front of all those stories. Like I've never seen that before with a guy connected to the Huskers. I'm not saying they haven't been good players, but you know what I mean. He's the quarterback. He's the number 2 guy in the nation. He flipped from the best program in the country right now to come to Nebraska. And so people are just like, why? What's the reason? Like all this stuff they want to know too and get their own stories. And so I've never seen attention like this on a Husker target at a game like this. Now, how much do I think everybody else around the country is really paying attention to that or getting the, quotes and clips that we are from the Polynesian Bowl? I think it's probably kind of minimal in stature to those people, but nonetheless, any of that is good that when it gets out there. And there's some recruits and guys in the 25 class who, saw the clip of Dylan Raiola throwing a football 70 yards, and they saw how it's coming out of his hand in the normal workouts and stuff like that. And that might very well make a difference. So I don't want to undersell that part.
BC, as Ravi said, let's change gears and talk Nebraska basketball for the next 10 minutes while we have you. A big game tonight against Rutgers, and I say a big game because these are the games Nebraska needs to win in order to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive, especially because of where they sit with strength of schedule and things like that. What do you expect out of this group tonight as a response to how that Iowa game finished?
Hopefully, a relentless nature on the defensive end that just I felt was lacking, and they look like a tired team Friday. And I sort of get it because they were in that stretch of 2 weeks where it was like a game every 3 days, and you had just beaten Purdue, and there was all this emotion and everybody patting you on the back the next couple of days. I kind of thought what happened at Iowa might happen. I have to be honest. It didn't shock me, but I said on Friday morning, someone was talking about the Iowa game. I was like, what really matters to me is after this 2-game stretch against Iowa, Rutgers, did you split it at least? If you can split it, you're on track. You're 4-3 in the league if you do that. You've got Northwestern coming in Saturday in a game that will give you a big chance against, I think, a stout Northwestern team. to get another nice win. But they've got to bring an energy and figure things out by talking to each other on the court in a way they just didn't do in Iowa City. They've got to have stuff sort of figured out when they get to the huddles at the under 16, under 12 timeouts, where guys are like, yeah, you saw that, I saw that, and you're growing within the game together. And they've done that effectively some nights, but they've been, as Fred was saying on the radio the other night, pretty choppy about it. So they have been good this year after failures for the most part. Like, they've done pretty good about bouncing back in a good way. And so you hope that they do that in this case. And this isn't like the, I guess what the Minnesota game was after Iowa, when they did have another, rough game. And if they can do that and just hit some shots, I mean, they only hit 4 threes against Iowa. If they get back to who they are there, and I think Bryce Williams has to be big. He's a guy who the rest of this season to me is like the wild card, and he played so well when, even though he had been injured against Purdue, I didn't think he played as well against Iowa. If he can have a nice night, that goes a long way for this team too.
BC, I feel weird calling a game must win in the middle of January, but I do think we're somewhere in that neighborhood for Nebraska here over the next few games. As you mentioned, they got at Rutgers, then Northwestern, and Ohio State at home. Ohio State's lost 3 straight. They're not playing great basketball right now. How would you describe, maybe not just the game at Rutgers, but kind of this stretch of winnable games, 2 of them at home for Nebraska in terms of their NCAA tournament hopes?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a huge stretch to at least get 2 of the 3. And I just think you got to keep yourself at 500 or above. And hopefully at some point you have that little streak you put together where you win 3 or 4 in a row in the league. And then everybody's on fire about this thing, sort of like they were right after the Purdue game, but in more of a sense that, like, yeah, look at the actual Big Ten standings and you have the Purdue win. So they're going to need to make that run at some point where they piece it together within league play. But I think what Hoiberg could have done very truthfully with his team after the Iowa game is say, look, we just went through this 2-week stretch of games 3 days after one another where when it began, you didn't know how healthy Rink Mass was going to be, remember? Like after the surgery, you didn't know how that was going to come out. Bryce Williams gets injured in the middle of it. We didn't even know if he was going to play one game. He comes out and does. And they survived it well enough to be 3-3, to go 2-2 and during that stretch. You beat Purdue. And now, as you're talking about the schedule going forward, I mean, I would remind my team, you got the road game against Wisconsin out of the way. You do play them again. You've got Purdue out of the way for good. You have a win. You got Michigan State out of the way. There's some stuff on this schedule that could have derailed things early on where you're 1-5, 2-4. You're not. You're 3-3. You're in a good spot, as he said the other day. But now there are these games where it's like, yeah, they should win that if they're a tournament team. And you've got to go prove it. And you've got to show that you're the group that can deal with success. And that's what they haven't done yet. They haven't shown that they are good at dealing with success. And that's going to determine if they end up on a bracket or not, if they can figure that out.
BC, yesterday we gave our midseason grades for both of the premier college teams here in Nebraska. For the Huskers, though, what kind of letter grade would you give them up to this point? Have they, well, I would guess they've exceeded your expectations or at least matched them. What grade would you give this team?
Yeah, I'd probably give them a B+. I think they've been really good. For what people, if you had said before the year to a Husker fan or just a basketball watcher in the state, hey, Nebraska's going to be, 13-4, 3-3 in the league. They knocked off number 1 Purdue by 16, won at Kansas State. There's some stuff in there. People be like, okay, I can go with that. That could be an interesting last couple of months. So the nice part is they're in position, right? We've watched Nebraska seasons around here where right about now I've been like, no one's paying any notice to it. You don't expect anything to happen. And this team should have some people's attention. They need to start playing a little more consistency. As I said in my last answer, I think to win over some people are still kind of skeptical of the whole thing. But all in all, I like how the portal guys that he added have come together. Rink Mass is probably better than I realized. Bryce Williams on certain nights is that type of guy. Juwan Gary, when he's at a high level, shows he can be sometimes the best player on their team. There's been good stuff. So I think it's a B+, and now win games like tonight and you start to work into that A category where, that if you can get to a bracket in March, I'll give that team an A every day, because I think I think a lot of people around here would have not taken that bet at the beginning of the year, given Nebraska's track record.
BC, got a couple minutes left with you here. If you had to narrow it down to one guy, obviously you know that Tominaga has to play well or Nebraska's going to have a hard time winning games. You know that Rink Most is going to have to play well or Nebraska's going to have a hard time winning games. Outside of those two, who do you look at and say, hey, Nebraska really needs X player to play at a level maybe a little bit above where they're playing, or at least a more consistent version of what we've seen in order to not only navigate this stretch of the next 3 games we talked about, but also find themselves in position to get an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament?
Juwan Gary. Gary's that guy who we've seen him when he's a madman on the boards and what that looks like at K-State when he goes out and, he basically had 10 of his 18 or whatever rebounds he ended with in 6 minutes of that game, and it was something to watch. So he has it in him to be that sort of junkyard dog that really tilts the game. And when he's playing like that, like against Kansas State, who got a big win the other night, against Baylor, there's times when he's going and when Bryce is going, and you look at Rink and you're like, man, that's a grown-up team. That's like that's the team. Like if you had the pickle jar and you couldn't get it open, there's men that can get that open on that team. And when Juwan is on, he's that guy that you think of first and foremost, but he's had games, and he had a little stretch in January where he didn't get the boards. He had 5 boards over 3 games for a while there, and it just kind of went away. And I know, the shoulder stuff you always wonder about, but Juwan to me is a guy who's just got to be relentless the last couple months. But honestly, to that question, you could say everybody's just got to get the best of themselves. Like CJ Wilcher has had a good season, and he's got to be that guy who pops in and scores 12 points for you tonight. Just he hits some big shots and he does his part. And then this guy does his part over there. Sam Hoiberg gets 2 or 3 steals. That's the stuff everybody's got to maximize for this team to be where they want.
That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, we appreciate your time as always. We'll catch up next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, BC.
That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. All sorts of Polynesian Bowl coverage over there. If you're itching for more Dylan Raiola, make sure you go check them out. Coming up next, we'll talk to Andy Kendeigh from KETV here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Andy Kendeigh from KETV. Andy, how are you this morning?
Morning, boys.
What's up, AK?
What's going on?
Oh, we're just we're living the dream out here, just trying to stay warm.
Can I ask one thing to Andy real fast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Andy,
yeah.
I got a quick one for you. Mm-hmm. Do you ever pull a Trey Palmer in your line of work and just wake up ticked off in the morning and know you're going to perform?
Usually I wake up ticked off and it gets worse. And so, as you get older, it's just every day is kind of like that. It's like, oh my goodness, it's what is today? Wednesday. And then it used to be Wednesday was hump day. Wednesday now is like, oh my goodness, we still got 3 more days. So let's go. But no, Trey Palmer, how about that the other day? That was pretty nifty.
Yeah, it was a good day for ex-Huskers for the Bucks. Levante David still showing he had it with his performance on the defensive side of the ball. Then we saw Trey Palmer obviously take a house call on that long touchdown one as well. So nice day to be a former Husker in Florida.
Yeah, you know, Shaq Barrett, the Boys Town grad, he had a nice afternoon, and he's kind of the spokesperson for that defense. And you know, that's you know, obviously the Eagles have a couple Huskers, and Cam Jurgens had a rough afternoon, but I think the same could be said about that same team as a whole. Man, I'm talking about a team that went south quickly. Some things in sports, that's what makes sports great, and you can say it makes sports great when you look at the Bills, and then there's always the flip side. There's always that balancer, and the Bills and the Eagles are that balancer. Like, it's not always the Cinderella story. Sometimes you also have the other stories that balance it out, and unfortunately, it's a tough week to be an Eagle fan.
AK, who's your team?
You know, I always root for in the past, I've rooted for quick games and good parking spots. But since I no longer cover the NFL,
there he goes.
You know, I kind of gravitate towards the Packers since I covered them in Wisconsin for 11 years, and so I probably gravitate to the Packers. And watching them last week was like, oh my goodness, is this franchise charm? You go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now Jordan Love, who looks like he's going to play the part for another decade or so. Now, I'm not convinced their luck will continue, but that was a performance for the ages against their old head coach and Mike McCarthy. So that was stunning, to say the least.
Hey, think Glenn Thomas can be as good of a quarterbacks coach as Green Bay seems to have up there?
Hopefully, he can be the quarterback whispers. You know, Sean, I give Sean Callahan a lot of credit. He's out in Honolulu with Steve Sipple, and you know, I was talking to him over the weekend, and I'm like, oh my God, that is so smart. Way to go! Like he said that, you know, the trip was, he had been having this in the works, and you know, I Zoomed with him yesterday, Sean, and he was out on the practice field, and I was like, dude, I don't care what you say and what we put on the air with you, as long as we see blue skies and guys run around in t-shirts and shorts. I mean, that warms my heart. Like, look at this stuff. It's just amazing to see. You know, that there's places in this world that's not under snow cover and minus temperatures. But you know, Sean was telling me about Dylan Raiola, that, you know, that's the reason why I basically made the trip, and Raiola is obviously the, you know, and there's a couple other Huskers and Carter Nelson involved as well, but you know, Raiola is the featured guy, and we're going to get to see him perform on Friday night on the NFL Network. That's going to could be the most watched Polynesian Bowl if they do the metrics of the viewership in the state of Nebraska. It could be off the charts for on Friday, because I'm really curious to see him throw it around and you know, to see him step up and win that quarterback competition, or at least the long throw competition the other day. It's been pretty impressive. You know, you can't help but to get juiced about the situation. You know, the Huskers are undefeated in the offseason, and they continue that trend again. So let's see where it goes.
We're talking to Andy Kendeigh, the sports director at KETV here in Omaha. AK, I'm a little surprised that you didn't campaign and let the higher ups know that, hey, it's really important for you to cover the Polynesian Bowl as well. Like, where you at on that one, man? Come on.
Well, I got that shut down pretty quickly. You know, some of it has to do with the new fiscal year. You know, January. If it's in December and you got some money left over in the budget, yeah, maybe then we can talk about that. But January is a tough deal to go to pitch that.
Well, listen, new fiscal year. That means it's like new fiscal year means it's like payday. You got all the money in the bank account. Let's go.
That's what I mean. That was my argument. I'm like, hey, you can move those shells around in October and November. Let's play ball early. So yeah, I mean, I tell you, and here's the other thing, and I don't know how these All-Star games, you get access, because everybody's in a good mood, everybody's willing to talk and whatever, and so that's why kudos to Sean to get out there and because the content he's sending back already is pretty amazing. So good on him.
Well, AK, we haven't gotten into this matchup enough today just yet, but we will down the stretch, and I'll start with you. Big game tonight between Creighton and number 1 UConn. What category do you think the Bluejays need to be excellent in order to pull out a win?
Oof, that's a great question. I'll say, you know, everybody would probably lean shooting and hitting a shot, and that's probably the obvious answer. But but they've proven that they can win without hitting shots. So I'll say defensive rebounding. If they can keep UConn's chances to one chance a trip down the floor, I think they're going to really have a chance of hanging in there. Defensively, there's always room for improvement with Creighton. They've shown that they can win what Matt called a mud fight the other day against St. John's. And, defense is what they say is portable. You can take it wherever you go. And they're going to need that tonight in Source. And if they can keep UConn off the boards, especially UConn, keep them off the offensive boards, I think they have a real good chance of winning. Guys, you look at their schedule, holy moly. This is probably arguably their toughest week of the regular season. Playing at UConn on Wednesday and then at Seton Hall on Saturday. I think they're staying out east, so they're not even coming back. So this is a true road trip for the Jays. And you want to get off on that right foot tonight. And this is a biggie. This is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's a biggie tonight on the Connecticut.
AK, got about 2 minutes left with you here. Since Nebraska's on the road, Creighton's on the road, what's keeping you busy for the end of the week here?
Can you say Omaha Supernovas? They've got some
yes, sir.
Let's go.
They're a week away from their season opener. We've got media availability with them today. We got a little UNO hockey because, let's not sleep on the Mavs. They're now nationally ranked again, back in the top 20. They got a big one. They've been on the road for a while. And, with the holiday break with college hockey, it's kind of easy to put UNO on the back burner, but they deserve your attention because they're now in the top 20 again, and then they've got a really formidable bowl this weekend in Denver coming in. So we'll be out there today, and UNO Hoops plays tomorrow. So there's plenty of stuff. Plus all the high school stuff. And here's the other thing: keep a spreadsheet on all these reschedulings, because that's the other thing. All these cancellations, suspensions, or not suspensions, cancellations, postponements over the weekend, and with all these snow days, you got to check the schedules to see what's going on when. To keep up and keep track. It's good that they're back in school today, though. Full day of school. God bless America.
AK, real fast here, a minute and a half. You mentioned the Supernovas. I know you have girls at home. How excited are they to have a professional women's sports team in Omaha?
It's a good – listen, this is a good thing, right? It's a good thing, and I give them credit. Now, I'm really anxious to see – I'm interested in seeing how this works out with the facility that they've chosen to play home games at, because, you guys know the drill. You've seen Creighton baseball play at the Chuck or TD Ameritrade, whatever you want to call the baseball field. They can have a good crowd against Nebraska with 7,000-8,000, and that baseball field it doesn't represent such a great crowd. So let's see if how many people show up at CHI and to support this new venture in the professional volleyball. Next Wednesday is going to be pretty cool. I know that. I don't know what will happen after that, but I know next Wednesday is going to be a pretty cool deal, and we'll see what happens.
That's Andy Kendeigh, sports director for KETV. Andy, stay busy out there, stay warm, and I'm sure we'll cross paths as we're out traversing the different sporting events across the city here in Omaha. It's good to talk to you as always.
Thanks, boys. Have a good week.
See you, AK.
That's Andy Kendeigh, sports director for KETV. Coming up next, we talked about that Creighton game a little bit with AK. We're going to talk about it a little bit more with Dom Amore from the Hartford Courant. He covers UConn. We will talk about the Jays headed out east to play the number one team in the country next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by Dom Amore. He is covering everything Connecticut sports for the Hartford Courant. Dom, how are you this morning?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us, man.
Dom,
how cold is it out there?
Cold.
It's actually, we warmed up a little bit today. I woke up and it was 6 degrees, which is, I think the first time it's been above freezing when I woke up
7 right now.
in over a week.
It's 18 here, so I'm thinking it's got to be lower than that there. But
yeah, you're going through a veritable heat wave in our terms. I think we got a high of 20 today, so I'm really excited actually.
Okay.
Dom, before we get started, I just want to say congratulations. I saw that you'd been named the Connecticut Sports Writer of the Year, so I want to say congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much. It's a small state, but we have a lot of very talented sports writers, so it's an honor to be considered for something like that even once. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. The UConn Huskies been honored as well with the number 1 ranking in the land. How has this team weathered the absence of one of their major pieces coming into the season in Donovan Clingan? He is been missing for quite a while, but it doesn't really seem like UConn's missed a step.
Well, the game that he went out, they were up by 9 at one point at Seton Hall, and that's the game that they've lost in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't quite ready that night to adjust without him. But when they played St. John's, St. John's, I think, tried to really clamp down on the backcourt and dare Samson Johnson to beat them. And they were able to get the ball to Johnson, and he scored 16. So even though Johnson hasn't quite had that productive a game since then, but his presence is enough, has been effective enough that people have to respect him and pretty much guard, UConn's other offensive players the way they would if Clingan were out there. So that being the case, they've been able to survive. They should obviously be better with Clingan. If you do see him tonight, I think it would just be for a cameo appearance. He's going to ramp up slowly. But you'd have to say one of many impressive things that UConn has done is play as well as they've played without their big man.
Dom, no Jordan Hawkins this year, no Andre Jackson Jr. yet. Dan Hurley has his team back as the top dog on the biggest stage, and I don't think a lot of people had the Huskies here at any point this season. What is it about this team that had you believing from season's beginning, if you had strong beliefs for this team, that they were going or that they weren't going to take a step back?
Well, I knew they were going to be good. I mean, as far as taking a step back, it's hard not to do that when you're national champs.
Right.
It's hard to repeat for the reasons that you alluded to. That look at what UConn's lost, and they've lost 3 NBA players, including a lottery pick, and they've lost other players as well. And that's hard to replace on any championship team. It's why it's so difficult to impossible to repeat, unless you do what John Wooden did back in the day, and that's just stack the best players in the country, the best recruits in the country year after year after year. That's also almost impossible to do now. But UConn did a great job of recruiting off their improvement in recent years, recruiting off their championship in last year. And they've been able to stack really good recruiting classes, one on top of the other, and hold on to kids. They haven't had wholesale transfers out. They've had some, but mostly kids that just weren't playing for them. So they've been able to just fill in the blanks with the right pieces. Now, they're not as deep as they were last year. And that's something that if they're going to repeat, they're going to have to, their 7, 8, 9, 10 players are going to have to be more playable than they are. That's a work in progress. But in terms of the top of their rotation, they've done a pretty good job of, retaining the players they could retain and replacing the players they've had to replace.
We're talking with Dom Amore. He covers all things Connecticut, including UConn men's basketball for the Hartford Courant. Dom, who this year has impressed you the most in the way they have stepped up into that vacuum from all those players that you mentioned, including 3 NBA guys from that national championship team?
Well, the guy that's obviously, the guys you would expect to be better are better. Newton is a veteran, is better. Alex Karaban has made a nice jump. He's certainly better. But the guy, the freshman, Stefan Castle, got off to a good start. Then he got hurt. When he came back, it took him a while, I think, to kind of get back in the swing. But starting with the stretch of that St. John's game when he had a miserable first half and made a number of big baskets down the stretch, his confidence has really soared. And he's a guy who has been projected as a lottery pick, a one-and-done lottery pick, and he's been starting to play like that. So he would be a guy that I think has really made a big difference. And also Hassan Diarra has had to play a bigger role with Naheem Aline transferring out, and he's held up very well to doing that. You thought he might have played a bigger role last year than he did. This year he's really stepping up to it. So there's several guys, but if I had to pick one guy, I would say Castle playing like the kind of player he was projected to be is really a key to what UConn's been doing lately.
Dom, as you look at this Creighton team and some of the challenges that they've posed for UConn in years past, obviously they split the regular season matchups last year as UConn went on to the national title, Creighton went on to the Elite Eight. What do you see as some of the challenges for this UConn team when you look at Creighton?
Well, obviously they had been kind of a hump that UConn could not get over until last year. And I would expect them to be a very tough opponent again. I mean, for one thing, they've been able to come into Gamble Pavilion and win, so they shouldn't have they shouldn't be spooked out by the environment. But the other thing is, they've got Kalkbrenner, and now with UConn not having Sonogo or Klingon, Kalkbrenner could be an even bigger problem for UConn tonight, and could be a problem that changes the game, in Creighton's favor. So I really have to go. Really, to me, it starts and ends with him. If UConn can keep him from killing them, I don't think they're going to stop him. But if they can keep him from killing them, I think they have a really good chance to win. If he goes wild and UConn just doesn't have an answer for him, and Johnson gets in foul trouble, and Klingon is not able to play more than a couple of minutes, if he does play at all, then I think it could be a difficult challenge for UConn tonight for sure.
Dom, after that 15-point loss to Seton Hall, who's a really good team this year, I saw a lot of reaction in the form of classic UConn, roll through the non-con and become mediocre in conference play. And I don't really think that aged very well for the people that said that. What sort of change did you see in this group after that loss?
Well, I think they stepped up to the toughness of the Big East. The Big East is a conference where you've got to be physical, you've got to be tough. UConn has done a better job of that in recent games. The Seton Hall loss has aged well. The way Seton Hall's played, it doesn't look quite as bad as it looked at the time. And as you mentioned, the criticism of the overreaction. But, that's part of the deal and part of the fun of coaching in a place like UConn. It's not much different, I suppose, at Kansas or Duke or Kentucky. Every game is a one-game season. It's the same thing with, this part of the country with the Yankees and Red Sox, and every game with them is a 162 one-game season. So that's part of the challenge and part of the fun of coaching and playing in this environment. It's not for everyone, but but if you're able to take it as it's intended and respond to it, then it works for you. And UConn was able to do that. They were able to get tougher and kind of fix the things that needed to be fixed coming out of that game in New Jersey.
Dom, as we got a couple minutes left here with you, this is at least by the numbers, a UConn team that hasn't been quite as dominant defensively as we've seen past Danny Hurley teams be. Is that something that you're seeing as a work in progress and they're continuing to improve on that through the season, or are there still some areas on that defensive end that you'd like to see get shored up a little bit?
Well, I think part of that is not having Klingon. That's probably part of the reason. Part of it is maybe playing to the score in some of the early games that they blew out, where they blew out teams. But I think that's something that it takes time to get up to speed with the kind of defense that Dan wants to play. So they're playing a lot of freshmen, or they're playing younger players. So it's going to take them time to get up to that speed. And of course, not having Klingon. And then also, as I mentioned, they don't have the depth. One reason they were able to play that kind of defense is because they could absorb foul trouble. They had 9-10 players that they could play. Right now, he doesn't have confidence in that number of players. So I think their defense will get better when and if he has confidence in playing more players, so they could be more aggressive, take more chances, and absorb more fouls.
Well, Dom, don't chalk me up as somebody who's disappointed if UConn's defense is taking a step back. I certainly won't miss that defense we saw last year at all. But Dom, wanted to say thank you for joining us here. And again, congratulations on the Sports Writer of the Year award. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right, you got it. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the game tonight.
You too. Thanks, Dom.
That's Dom Amore from the Hartford Courant joining us on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Speaking of Warhorse Sportsbook, we are in that time of year. It's their Festival of Games promotion. You can get qualified until February 1st for the Prop Card Challenge for that big professional football game championship on February 11th. Get qualified, by spending at least $50 on a sportsbook ticket. Every time you do that, you get an entry into the $100,000 prop card challenge and an entry into the $20,000 grand prize drawing. All the information that you need is at warhorsecasino.com. Make sure to be a rewards member so you are eligible for these prizes and entries. Coming up next, Anna Bellinghausen here live from Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And for hour number 3, we're on KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. And joining us now is Anna Bellinghausen. Anna, how are you? Oh, Shane, turn her mic on.
Hello?
There she is.
Shane doesn't want me to talk on the show.
Shane.
Can you hear yourself fine? Can you hear us fine?
No.
What
Now
about
I can.
So Monday, over the weekend,
Yeah.
Anna and I did the Big East shoot-around show
Yep.
at Creighton before the big game against St. John's, and I picked her up because she's like, my car is buried. She drives this little white Camry that we can see from the windows now. On Monday, did you go out there and shovel the snow away, or was that today that you did that?
Okay, I actually have a good story about that. So I went outside yesterday too, because we had a stay-at-home day on Monday because it was so cold. And then
I don't know what those are.
Yeah, so you guys don't get those or snow days. You're like the kids that never get the fun.
We're the ones that are always in school.
Yep.
We did stay at home on Friday, and Sasha
But we get online learning.
Yeah,
we got
you have
other
online
kids.
learning. You don't get you get
No
the remote
snow days.
days. Yeah, no snow days. So I go outside. I'm like, all right, it's time. I have to try to start my car. It started. Didn't sound pretty, but it started. And then I went behind it because that's where the snow like drift was behind my car, pretty much where everyone else is if you hadn't left yet. So I got my little shovel. It's literally like this. Like that's how big the shovel is. And it's for like a porch is really what the shovel's for. I go to take
Porsche?
a porch. not my
Like a
Porsche.
deck.
Like a deck.
Oh.
A deck. And so I go to scoop the first thing of snow. It snaps. Like the whole the shovel snaps out because I guess
Was it so heavy?
I overestimated how heavy the snow was for this little tiny shovel. It's like a lime green shovel. I look like a little kid out there like playing in the sand. It snaps in half, and then it catches my pants I'm wearing and rips a hole in them.
Oh no!
And I just go back inside. I'm like, I'm not going.
Yeah, I'm dealing with this later.
I'm like, I'm not going.
This is a problem for future.
So how'd you get
Anna.
out then? Like, did you just end
I
up?
went back out and shoveled the rest,
okay.
but I had to be really careful. I used like the end of the shovel, and people were just driving by me, like not helping, nothing. It's fine.
No one else wants to get out in that cold.
That was the worst part about apartment living was when you had to like they'd get scooped in and then you're like, I live in an apartment. I don't have a shovel.
Right, yeah.
Like what's happening here? I used to just throw it in reverse and just gun it out of there and hope for the best.
But you have a car that's high off the ground.
Now I do,
mine's
yeah. When I
low.
lived in an apartment, I didn't. So I was
man,
I was
can't
just
imagine it
doing
just
my
packing
best.
up against my car.
But yeah, that's a harrowing story there,
Yeah.
Anna. I'm glad you made it here. Okay. How was the Big East shoot around? That seemed like it was fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. This is the first year the Big East has done that, and it's kind of like a college game day, Big Ten kickoffs, big noon kickoff sort of thing that they're going for, and I think it worked really well despite all the weather. There's still like what 200
At least
people there,
200 to 300
Yeah,
people
200 to 300.
in that event space.
Right.
But I don't even know in the venue how many people showed up to that game.
They said it was 17,000.
Yeah, it looked pretty full. I was impressed.
I don't know how accurate that is, but 17,000. I mean, regardless, if you're anywhere between 15 to 17 at CHI on that day, or a lot of people,
It wasn't fun driving in.
yeah, you couldn't even get out of your neighborhoods in a lot of cases. So yeah, that was super fun. Andrew, thanks for doing that with me.
Oh no, it was a blast. I appreciate you thinking of me. But overall, I think that is such like a good effort for the Big East right now because in terms of conferences, they're falling behind because they are only basketball. So they don't have the football element. They really don't have like a strong baseball element either. It's just basketball for them. So any way they can brand themselves to get bigger. And look, the Big East basketball conference is one of the biggest.
Yeah,
so
it's one of the best.
I'm not going to sleep on that and say that they aren't, what the Big Ten probably is to the college football world. But overall, to get more stuff out like that is just so much better branding for the teams that that need it the most, because you look at what we have right now in the top 25. You have the number 1 team in the country in UConn. Now everybody knows the name UConn and has known it since probably 2000, since they've won a couple of national championships in that time. Creighton has always been ranked and always been good. You have Marquette that's like really coming alive at this point. Some of the best teams in basketball are in the Big East, and I bet without like that being the case, you walk around and you ask just fans all over the country, can you tell me 3 teams in the Big East? I doubt anybody could name more than 2.
Yeah, basketball is, I mean, their bread and butter, obviously, but I think they're finding creative ways to compete with the bigger conferences. And you see the same thing in the mid-major level, too. The Summit League and the Big Sky, they did their own challenge because they wanted their schools to get meaningful games because the Power 5 schools won't come and play them. And they need meaningful games for their resume builders because there's a huge difference between being a 12 seed in the NCAA tournament or being a 16 or 15. So I think there's been an effort to kind of counteract everything that's happened with the conference realignment, but I think they've done a good job from the Big East to the mid-major level.
And I'll tell you what, too, it's fun whenever you sit at a desk like that, and it's like, even though it's only on a YouTube stream, it feels like you've made it, right? Like it feels like, man, like this, I'm one of those that travel around for college game day, and like I'm sitting here. I'm not just the guest picker. Like I'm actually somebody that's relevant, and that's a cool feeling in itself. But no, I'm happy you brought up the Summit League because a graduate of UNO, basketball is pretty good this year.
Yeah.
Top of the conference.
First place. I think they were tied for first place. I'm not sure if that got shifted around by today, but Frankie Fiddler, I mean, he's one of my favorite players Omaha's ever had. Also for the fact that he's so good and doesn't want to leave, because you see so many guys get poached at the mid-major level, especially in the Summit League. Like the freshman of the year always is going to get asked, hey, we got some money for you at a Power 5 school. But I think it's so special when those guys commit to these mid-major programs and you see them succeed. And I got to be on a game with Weber State, and they have one of the best players.
Weber State could be a tournament team this year.
Yeah, they have a couple of the best players, and you look at Dylan Jones, a guy who's going to go probably first round in the NBA draft for Weber State there. It's really cool that those guys stay. And doing that game, I got to hear more about Damian Lillard and his time at Weber State and the coaches that interacted with him. After his freshman season, Dame went up to the coach and said, I'm not leaving. Like after his freshman year, so many rumors, everyone's talking. Damian Lillard goes into the coach's office. He's like, I'm not worried. What are you talking about? Like, I'm not leaving. What are you?
If NIL was around and popular when Damian Lillard was
sure
there,
they could have threw some
left.
dollars though.
Well,
anyways,
it's kind of funny that though, because you have guys that, whether it's like a Dame Lillard at Weber State or like a Steph Curry at Davidson.
And CJ McCollum went to Lehigh.
Yeah, you've got guys that I bring up those two specifically because I know you mentioned that story with Lillard, and I've heard similar stories with Curry where it's like, hey, you guys didn't want me then, you don't get me now, because I know Duke came calling, and ironically enough, Steph's little brother ends up playing for Duke after transferring.
Yeah, they didn't want to mess up twice.
Yeah, he was a transfer though. He started at Liberty, averaged like 20 points a game, ends up at Duke, and obviously he's had a nice NBA career as well. But you have guys that kind of have that mentality.
Yeah.
It seems like Frankie Fiddler's kind of in that same mode where it's like, hey, if you didn't want me coming out of high school, like you don't get the benefit of the doubt now.
And that's so his personality too.
Yeah.
Omaha was his only D1 offer, and he sat up on the stage during our Mavericks All Access show, and he goes, I want an NCAA tournament. Just straight up said that. And I think that confidence just oozes around with this team. And I think it's fun to see it. And it's cool to have a hometown kid from Bell West do so well at this stage. And I think he's starting to get more national recognition. I mean, of course, his freshman season, he got on SVP, Scott Van Pelt, best thing I saw segment with
that
Fiddler on the roof.
shabby.
Yep. Like it was like 9 points in a minute and a half or something crazy.
He made, I think it was 11, because I think
it might have been 11.
Like 3 threes and then a 2 mixed in there as well. But he hit the game-winning 3, and I mean, just watching that Omaha team come back, and I was standing on the baseline when he made that shot, and you knew who the ball was going to. Everybody knew who was getting that basketball except the opposition. It's like you guys don't realize that this guy is, I mean, he's hotter than fire right now.
Yeah.
He's definitely hotter than it's in here right now. But Frankie Fiddler is a tremendous athlete. And what I also love about him too is just how he carries himself, kind of what Anna was alluding to. I mean, he's a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got dry humor, so he's really relatable. He doesn't think he's all that, but like the guys that don't think they're all that, but somewhat know that they're all that,
they have a confidence still.
Yeah, those are the best type of athletes in any sport.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you're good enough to be there,
Right.
but you're not going to like tell everybody you're good enough.
And
to be
anytime I ask him about his performances, it's all credit back to his teammates. And I think that says a lot about him because, yeah, he has that confidence and swagger on the court, but I don't think it makes him too egotistical to where he can't give up a ball to a teammate that's more open than him.
Not only is that a credit to his upbringing, but it's a credit to his high school coaches as well, and the people over at Bell West.
Yeah.
I almost said the other one, Bell West, because you look at Chucky Hepburn a little bit, and he's kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not somebody to boast.
He's a dominant guy too. You see it on his face. I mean, I would not want to go 1v1 against Chucky Hepburn.
Omaha's got a big game against South Dakota State tomorrow. That's a big matchup for them on the road to see if they can continue their little nice streak against the Dakota schools here in the last week or so. And I think that they've got a stretch coming up here that'll go a long way in determining whether or not they end up making that NCAA tournament run that Frankie Fiddler's hoping for. Switching gears to Creighton a little bit here, Anna. Obviously, they've got a huge matchup against UConn tonight, going for the first win in program history over a number 1 team. Now, that sounds dramatic, but it's also they didn't have a ton of opportunities until recently to be in that conversation. I know they played Gonzaga a handful of years ago as a number 1, but even these really, really good like Villanova teams and stuff were usually like 3 or 4 or 5. So it's not like they haven't beat really high quality teams before, but never beat a number 1 team in the country. Last year, they obviously split with UConn. I guess, what weighs more in your mind in this game? The UConn being number 1 and Creighton having never beat a number 1 team, or the fact that UConn's only beat Creighton once ever?
Yeah, I think you got to look at it from the latter position. You can't really. Okay, also, the rankings right now are kind of all over the place with how many teams lost in that top 25. Not saying UConn doesn't deserve to be.
They're definitely a top 5 team.
Yeah, they're definitely a top 5 team.
There's no dominant team in college basketball either, which is why they are the number 1 team right
literally, now. It's like you mean, you guys don't remember because you're a lot younger than me probably, but like in 2007, I think it
Back
was
in your days.
in college football, there was
Anna was a 2000 baby, so that's really old.
Listen, I started remembering football about 7, but there was this stretch in college football where the number 2 team in the country lost like 4 weeks in a row. And that kind of felt like last week in college basketball, where it's like, I think Kansas ended up at number 2 at one point. USF, South Florida ended up at number 2 in the country at one point that year because everybody else just lost. And not to say that UConn isn't really, really good, but they kind of just were like, well, we're the only people that survived last week. So we're number 1.
And they're doing it without a big man.
Yeah. They've been without.
Who could be back?
Our guy says limited.
Unlikely.
Our guy says limited minutes if he is back. They're going to bring him along slow, it sounds like.
I just listened to Dan Hurley's little press conference that he did about him, but he said he practiced back-to-back days, which was a good sign. I don't know.
Sign.
Are they bluffing though? And he's actually fine, and they're just going to play him,
or is he not fine? And they're saying that he's practicing because they want Creighton to be aware of his presence.
I know, and it's funny because Dan Hurley knows what he's doing. Like when he's talking to the media, these coaches aren't dumb. They know everyone's listening. They know the opposing team's listening. So it always has me thinking, like, do I trust this guy?
I do gotta say,
they are sneaky.
I really dislike Dan Hurley. I know he's a great basketball coach.
He's controversial for sure.
I would incredibly punchable.
Very
face.
punchable.
Incredibly.
I was about to say the same thing.
Incredibly.
All right,
punchable
Shaka
face.
Smart though.
Ooh.
Where would you rank?
I don't
Where would
think
you
I'd
rank?
punch Shaka in the face.
I would. I don't know. I wouldn't do it before Hurley, but I would put Shaka also a very punchable face. But Hurley is. I think Hurley's probably tops of my list in the Big East for punchable faces.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know that there's anybody else that
I think a lot of people agree with you.
He gets under
Twitter does not like him.
Oh man, he gets under my skin so much. Although I gotta say, the Shaka Smart playing defense really bothers me too.
That was crazy.
I would trip him, like if I was a ref or a player, I would just trip him and have him fall on the ground.
You know, the refs don't have to trip anybody; they can just tee them up.
Yeah, no, I would.
There is power when you wear the black and white stripes.
You know what's funny though is you could trip him and be like, oh, you tripped me. You were on the floor, teed up. So both he ends up on his butt and you tee him up. That's what I would do if I was a ref because I'm petty like that.
Yeah.
But no, Shaka Smart and Dan Hurley, probably the most punchable faces in the league.
I think the Big East has some of the most recognizable and fiery coaches across college basketball. Would you guys agree?
Oh, great coaches in the Big East. I mean, it's a little less so now.
SEC is pretty wild too.
SEC's a little wild.
Musselman, yeah.
You got one. Nate Oates putting hands on a Missouri guy last night. Nate Oates is a weird dude.
That's a punchable guy.
Him and Musselman, both very punchable faces. But no, the SEC gets a little wild. But the cool thing about the Big East is you've not only got guys that are personalities, but they're also really, really good basketball coaches.
Did you hear what Rick Pitino said in his?
I did hear what Rick Pitino said. He's a character.
They've got characters in the Big East.
He started as a punchable face, but it's like fallen off the list because of with his age and how
that would just
how
be
obnoxious he kind of is. He's kind of like the grandpa that tells you stories, but like also like shoots you straight.
You're kind of
like I'm cool with Rick Pitino.
I don't dislike Rick Pitino as much as I used to. I mean, I don't know how much I would want to hang out with him, but he doesn't like get under my skin.
What about Fran McCaffrey? That's what Travis.
Fran McCaffrey, incredibly punchable face, so punchable. I'd pop that guy right in the nose. Sean Miller, really don't like Sean Miller. Not a Sean Miller guy.
He's a winner, but yeah. I just kind of like Shaka. I don't know if I'd punch Sean Miller in the mouth.
I would definitely punch Sean Miller in the face. I don't mind.
Are we clipping these? We're just gonna send them out to all the coaches.
Assault.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I don't mind Thad Matta. That's fine.
Ravi, third-degree assault.
I don't mind Ed Cooley. That's fine.
Kim English is. He's a Missouri legend, so I can't.
I don't have any issue with Kim English yet. I'll give it time. We got time still. I don't have a problem with
Matta?
No problem with Matta, no problem with Cooley, no problem with Holloway.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Seton Hall.
I don't have a problem with Kyle Neptune. It's mostly Shaka Smart and Dan Hurley.
You don't like the guys that win.
Yes, they're very annoying. They're super annoying. I hate it. Yeah, if you can bring all the losers you want in the CHI and you're in no danger. You take your L and go home. That's fine. Although, even when they lose, Shaka and Danny Hurley are both like, I don't know. They really get under my skin. I don't know what it is. I dislike them a lot.
Now, Anna, if you're thinking about UNO hockey here for a moment, because they are back in the top 20 for college rankings, and you're thinking of punchable faces.
On the hockey team?
Not on the hockey team, like of teams they play.
Okay.
Like, where would you rank? Where would you rank it? Because the conference they play in, the NCHC, is full of dominant players. But like North Dakota has to be number one.
North Dakota's number one.
But where would you fall with like 2 and 3 on that list? Because I think you could go a lot of different directions.
Denver's the first one that comes to mind, in my opinion. Also because they've pretty much always been top 5 in the country.
So kind of
Denver's always reasons. Yeah, they win.
North Dakota's just like, they're unbearable.
North Dakota, but number 3.
Would you say, like, because St. Cloud State is good, but like I don't know if they're like punchable face good.
No.
Then you have Duluth, who's kind of like borderline, but like could really get under your skin.
I know they don't really like Minnesota State. Because they play them every year.
So out of the conference.
Yeah, so out of the conference.
Going out.
I mean, whenever you play a Michigan or Ohio State team, you always want to beat the Big Ten schools.
Yeah, what about Western Michigan?
That one also weirdly came to mind, but I'm going to go Duluth just because of their success too. So basically, we're just saying these are the most successful teams.
The teams that you don't like and the coaches you don't like are the ones that win.
I will say Jay Wright's as good as any coach that's ever come through the Big East, and I love Jay Wright. I didn't want to punch him in the face.
That's the same thing with Greg McDermott. I mean, we're probably biased because we're from here and we get to talk to him, but like he is just a nice guy. Like I don't think people disrespect him across the conference.
No. I do think people disrespect Dan Hurley a little bit because he's kind of a nutso.
Well, like you wouldn't punch Coach K in the face.
No, I don't think I would. No, I wouldn't. I respected Coach K. I might punch Bill Self in the face. He's like borderline.
I think Bill Self's funny.
What about John Calipari?
No, I don't mind Coach Cal. I know a lot of people don't like him. I really don't mind Coach Cal. I don't know how good of a coach he is, but I don't mind him.
Who's Michigan's coach right now?
So
Juwan Howard? No, now he would punch you in the face.
Yeah.
He's had some issues. He would punch you in the face for sure.
I mean, most punchable face up here is Andrew. So.
Easy.
Yeah.
I'd punch myself in the
Yeah.
face.
Well, I got the beard to absorb it. It's not going to do
True,
any
yeah,
good to punch me in the face. You gotta watch out there.
I feel like I have a punchable face too. So
Why?
No.
Why do you think you have a?
I don't know. My friends say
Yeah,
that.
Shane over here just said he would punch you in the face.
Because sometimes I
heard
just
that.
have like an evil grin on my
Shane,
face.
you can't say that, man.
You
You
just
can't say that.
you're mischievous
Yeah,
looking.
yeah.
You're just always up to
Maybe
something.
it's just my friends.
It's probably just your friends. Hopefully, it's just your friends.
Nobody can do
You
that.
mentioned Omaha hockey. They've got Denver number 5
Yeah.
in the
Big
country
weekend.
coming up this weekend.
Big weekend.
Friday and Saturday at the Baxter Arena. We've got some hockey. We got hockey guests coming tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
So we'll preview that series.
Who are we talking to tomorrow, Shane? Ty?
It's a super good
Forward
question.
of the week.
He said, I don't know. You can also speak into the headset too. You're wearing one.
It wasn't pretty. It's flickering.
No,
Just got to stay.
We're
on
speaking
it.
to somebody on that team tomorrow.
we're gonna
That's
talk
awesome.
Omaha hockey tomorrow, and so
We're getting
preview.
somebody.
Thank you, Shane. That's
Yeah, thanks, Shane.
We'll be on it.
very enlightening. We will.
You should ask them the same question.
Who's
would
the
they
most
punch in the
punchable face?
on their team?
Well, that you should ask that because I would love to hear the answer, and they're going to say Brock Bremer. But I would also love
I'd
to hear
punch
the
Brock in
teams.
face.
You love to hear it.
Brock's a meanie butt to me.
Before we get to trivia here in the next segment, anything you're looking for tonight with Creighton and UConn as they head out at 6 p.m.
Well, if Donovan's playing, I think will be the number one thing
Sure.
to see if Dan Hurley was lying or not.
Probably
I think-
doesn't seem trustworthy.
How Kalkbrenner does, I think, is a big key to success. If you haven't, look at Jacob Padilla's Twitter thread on that and just like his film breakdown because it really shows you how crucial Kalkbrenner is to the success of Creighton. I mean, not like that's rocket science to anybody, but I think he breaks down in a really cool way. Also, when you look at how Creighton responds to adversity, they had a 9-point deficit in the second half to St. John's. Baylor Scheiman got teed up. Whether you think that was the right call or not, doesn't matter. It still happened. And I think that team could have folded.
Mhm.
And I think maybe even past weeks, that Creighton team would have folded. But I think something has kind of been sparked in them and ignited over the past week or so, maybe in practice. I don't know exactly, but I think they've responded a lot better to adversity. And now it's adversity on the road against the number one team in the country. So if that doesn't show you what you're made of, I don't think anything will. So that's exactly what I'm looking forward to tonight.
And you got to shut down Alex Caravan.
Yeah.
That dude has been unbelievable over the last 4 games. He's shooting 42% from downtown and is averaging 19 points per game. And he can't miss, and he's feeling it. He's feeling the flow. Just like Abby Gilmore. Feel the flow, Abby. Feel the flow. That's Alex Caravan. It's about shutting him down. If you take away him, the chances of winning this game are tremendously higher, even if the big man plays. And you take away Caravan, you're good.
And that's one of the things Creighton tends to do really well at is they make the best player on the other team work incredibly hard for what they get. We see that pretty consistently from this team. They'll probably still end up close to their average in points, but it's going to be an inefficient slog of a way to try and get there. That's kind of been the Greg McDermott MO defensively as they've improved over the last few years. They just try and make it as difficult as possible on the star players. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the approach they take with Caravan as well. The problem against UConn is you do have a couple guys that are really capable. We talked to Dom earlier about Tristan Newton, about Stephon Castle, Solomon Ball as well. These are all guys that are either highly rated recruits or they've been in the program for a while, that it's going to be really challenging to decide who you're going to take away and make their life a little bit more difficult. That's a lot easier if Klingon's not playing and Ryan Kalkbrenner can patrol the paint.
But on top of that, Creighton offers the same thing.
That's true.
Because if they take away, let's just say Shireman.
Yeah.
Well,
Trey,
you got to deal
you
with
got
Trey and Kalkbrenner.
You got Tricky Trey on the other hand, so
you got to watch
be careful.
out for Tricky Trey. Coming up next, we've got some trivia and we've got some. I don't know what happened there. We've got an opportunity for you to win Omaha Supernovas tickets as well. Coming up here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers, Anna Bellinghausen with me here as well. we're about to play some trivia, but before we do that, I want to tell you about what we're giving away. We're giving away some Omaha Supernovas tickets for a week from today. That's when Pro Time in Nebraska starts with your Omaha Supernovas. They hit the court for the first ever Pro Volleyball Federation match on January 24th at 7 p.m. at the CHI Health Center against the Atlanta Vibe. You can get season or single match tickets over at supernovas.com if you're not the lucky winner today. You can witness world-class talent with both the Supernovas and the Atlanta Vibe. They've got NCAA champions, All-Americans, and Olympians all on the court. Join the volleyball movement sweeping across the country and see your Major League Volleyball team, the Omaha Supernovas. Again, tickets available at supernovas.com or by playing a little trivia game with us here today.
Yes, sir.
Andrew, take it away.
Well, let's bring on Scott for a moment. Shane, can you pot him up for me? He's got him going. Scotty, you there?
I'm here.
Scotty, you want to play some trivia?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Anna, you're off the hook today.
Oh, so I don't have to play?
You don't have to play. You can sit
Okay.
here and enjoy it. You know what? I will. Do you have teams pulled up?
Yeah.
I'll send you the questions, and you can alternate questions with me. Ravi, you got to leave the room.
Oh, I got to go. See you guys.
Scotty, all right, this is what I'm going to have you do because I see you're registering from a different area code. We are giving away some Supernova tickets. Will you be able to make the match next Wednesday? Yes or no?
Yeah.
All right, so he's taking the tickets. All right, fair enough. Let's do it. Ravi, you got to run, man, because these doors are open. You can't hear the questions. Scott, just so you know, our heat is not working today. So yeah, Ravi is he's got to cook it all the way to the far corner of the restaurant so he doesn't hear us ask you these questions. Shane, can you play some music for us?
Yeah, I can get some music for you. Let me see here.
Hey, take your time.
Well, I mean,
he's not a DJ. He's a producer.
He should be.
I should be. Well, you can start. You can go. I'll get you some music.
Well, I got to send Anna these questions anyway. There it is. Okay. All right. Question number 1 for you, Scotty. Who knocked out Steph Curry and Davidson back in the 2008 NCAA tournament? Was it Memphis, Kansas, or UCLA?
Ooh, I'm going to go with Kansas.
Anna, go ahead. Read question number 2.
All right, Scott, here's the next one. Who holds the NFL record for single-season touchdown receptions as well as the rookie record in that category? Is it Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, or Devontae Adams?
I'm going to go Randy Moss.
And question number 3, Scotty. What baseball team does Jerry support in Seinfeld? Is it?
Man, go ahead. Never seen the show.
Oh, boy. Okay, is it the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, or the Dodgers?
All right, tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker question.
Tiebreaker right here. This one you're going to love even more. How many Seinfeld episodes were made?
So it's just closest 2 here.
All right. I'm going to go with 202.
All right. Thank you, Scotty. Flag him down, Shane. Be like an airplane guy on the runway, getting him with the yellow cones. I don't know where Ravi went. He's all the way in the back. He can't see him.
I don't know how I would have done on this
all
trivia,
the tall
Andrew.
chairs in the restaurant right now are blocking Ravi, and Shane can't see that high. So we found Ravi. He's coming back. Scott, answer this for me. How do you feel?
Well, not great.
That's me every time. It's okay.
He's not feeling too strong, but you know what? Maybe Ravi will have some trouble down the backstretch here. Ravi, as you know, you get 1 Hail Mary, 3 questions in the tiebreaker. Are you worried about Scott? Say hello to Scott for a moment.
Scott, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, man? How are you? You guys staying warm in there?
We're doing our best, man. I found a nice little heater on the other side of the restaurant where the HVAC's actually working, so I was staying toasty over there.
That's why you weren't coming back?
Yeah, I was like, it's actually really nice over here.
All righty, here we go. So, first question to Ravi. Who knocked out Steph Curry and Davidson back in the 2008 NCAA tournament?
Kansas.
Go ahead, Anna. Question number 2.
Who holds the NFL record for single-season touchdown receptions as well as a rookie record in that category?
Randy Moss.
Okay.
And question number 3. What baseball team does Jerry support in Seinfeld?
Jerry's a Mets fan because I think there's an episode where he meets Keith Hernandez, and it's like a big deal. So I'm going to go Mets.
Let's go
Okay.
with the Mets. Tiebreaker question.
Tiebreaker. How many Seinfeld episodes were made?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm not a huge Seinfeld guy. I want to say it ran for, I'm going to say 212.
Thank you, Ravi. All right, let's go through the answers. You guys are pretty neck and neck here.
Uh-oh.
All right, question number 1. Who knocked out Steph Curry and Davidson back in the 2008 NCAA tournament? Was it Memphis, Kansas, or UCLA? You both said Kansas. You both are correct. Question number 2, Anna.
All right, so who holds the NFL record for single-season touchdown receptions as well as a rookie record in that category? Was it Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, or Devontae Adams? It was Randy Moss.
I had to play to Anna's like skill set there, being a Vikings fan.
Yeah,
she was
I would have got that one.
He broke Jerry Rice's touchdown record in 2007 with Tom Brady.
All right, no one likes to know it all. Show off.
But Jerry Rice did it in like 12 games during a shortened season. So,
all right, you guys are tied at 2 apiece. We go to question number 3. What baseball team does Jerry support in Seinfeld? Scott, you said the Yankees.
I think it's the Mets.
Ravi said the Mets. The answer is the Mets.
Ooh.
Sorry, Scott.
Scotty. I was hoping you'd get that curveball, man. We need somebody to take down Ravi eventually one of these days. But the tiebreaker question, and Scott, if you would have said the Mets, you would have won. How many Seinfeld episodes were made? Scott said 202. Ravi said 212. The answer is 180.
Oh, it's less than I thought.
Usually you go over too. So.
Yeah.
So Scotty, not bad. 3 out of 4. Just not enough to take down Ravi today. We appreciate the call, though, man.
All good, man. Thanks for letting me play. Love listening to the show. You guys keep it up.
My man.
Appreciate you, Scott.
My
so
man.
we're going to
Thanks,
pick
Scott.
our winner out of our
poll on Instagram.
Yes, there we
So
go.
those that chose Ravi, congratulations. You have a chance to win 4 tickets. We will go back during the break. We will randomize these names. That's going to be a project for AB because she's the social media guru of our company, next to like Avery Howard and some others. Like I can't keep anybody out.
Keep the respect out there.
Anna, how would you have done on that trivia?
Oh, well, I was thinking, I probably would have guessed.
You would have got Randy Moss, right?
I would have guessed the first one, the Steph Curry. I don't know off the top of my head. Don't watch Seinfeld, but I feel like I've seen photos and I would have guessed Mets. Episodes, I have no idea.
Okay.
I think we would have been either tied and I would have lost the tiebreaker like usual.
Okay.
Or I would have won because of that tiebreaker.
Yeah, the Kansas game is burned in my memory because Steph Curry gave up the last shot because he ended up getting double teamed. His point guard ended up taking it, and it was for the win.
It's not fair. I was 8 years old.
Yeah, it's not fair. I was 21. So
you would have missed that one though.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I would have been between Memphis and Kansas. I know they played in the final. They were in the final.
I would have said Memphis.
I would have had a good guess.
I think I was guessing Memphis in my head before I realized the italicized ones were the correct
I knew Ravi
answers.
was a big Steph Curry fan, so I had to play to his strength. Then I played to Anna's strength, and then the last one was I just love Seinfeld.
That was just.
And so I'm like, I want to throw a curveball, and I can't believe you pulled the Mets out of the behind without using any lifeline.
Yeah, no, so I know they're in New York. I know that George is the big Yankees fan because he works for the Yankees at one point during the show. And then I remember a whole Keith Hernandez storyline where Elaine is dating Keith Hernandez, and it's like a very big deal. And I remember like Jerry being like weirdly obsessed with him, and so I was like, he's got to be a Mets fan because they wouldn't have him and George be fans of the same team because then you lose a potential like comedic conflicts. So
again.
Just zoned out that entire time. No idea what you just said.
Okay, fun fact before we go to break here. Can you tell me what's featured in every episode of Seinfeld?
Is it the diner?
Nope.
The place where they get their no?
So if you aren't a big Seinfeld guy, why do you know so much?
I mean, I've seen a lot of the episodes. I just don't I don't like it the same way other people do. Like, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
But people
it's like Harry Potter. If you've seen it,
yeah, like some people that like Seinfeld are like way into Seinfeld, right? And I'm like, I've seen a lot of it because it was just on all the time, and I'm like, it's okay. I'll watch it, but it's not. I don't dislike it. It's just not like I prefer Friends in terms of like my 90s sitcoms.
I see.
I know Andrew's a big Friends guy too. What is it? What's the answer?
I believe it's Jerry's Superman statue.
Oh, yeah, that's what Amazing Daniel. He says Superman, so nailed it. Well done, Amazing Daniel. That is trivia for today. We will pick a winner for the Supernovas tickets off the Instagram poll. Coming up next, we'll wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers, Anna Bellinghausen here with us. We're also on KFOR in Lincoln for this third hour. If you have had any trouble on the roads over the last week, which I think is a lot of you, maybe you got into a personal injury accident. If that's you, you need to count on our friends over at Dyer Law. They are the team that can provide you with a helping hand no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. All right, Anna, so I know we were talking about the Hotter Ones challenge that some of our teammates did earlier or did yesterday. I know you were there, but you didn't partake.
I was a witness, but I did not participate, and I don't care what anybody says. Like, I'm not doing that.
I think that's a wise decision.
I'm a mild to medium Buffalo Wild Wing gal, and I'm not going to put myself through, like, even honey barbecue. Like, not like
Whoa.
that's not saying that's hot, but, like, that's what I'd go for. I'm not going ghost peppers.
You're going sweet.
Yeah, I'm going sweet. I'm not going to torture myself.
I'm a garlic
for
parm.
this.
I go garlic
Yeah,
parm.
garlic
See,
parm's
I
fine.
can't do garlic parm
Oh,
because
I
it's
love-
too strong
I
for
love
me.
garlic parm.
But I live in that area too. Now I can get into the buffalo, like the hot if I want to for a little bit, but I'm not one that, wants my insides to be killing me.
So here's the
Yeah.
problem that I have with some of the hot sauces too, is I really hate vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those are like
Yep.
super vinegar heavy on the flavor. And so even if I could deal with the heat, I just hate the flavor of it so much, I'm not even going to do it.
I mean, 2 of our participants threw up.
I saw that.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, that reassured me
That you made the
yesterday
right
that
call?
I made the right choice by not
Poor
showing up.
Marissa, so she can't drink actual milk. So she had silk, like almond milk.
Oh,
That's who was chugging out of the jug.
and so she was chugging the milk, and that's what made her throw up, was the silk milk.
So is there going to be an extended version
There's a
of
full
that?
version. Yeah,
Okay.
that was just a sneak
So
peek
who
last
else?
night.
With Brandon is the other one that
Brandon
threw up?
threw up, but
What-
I'm proud of him. He did all 10.
He finished.
He
So
finished.
did
yeah.
Marissa finish?
She
He's
did,
a
yeah.
fighter.
Everyone completed the challenge.
So tell us this. So I'm glad you cleared it up that 2 people did actually.
Everybody.
That 2 people did actually throw up because I didn't know if people were just being dramatic.
no,
for the
they
video.
did. I watched them run to the bathroom,
So
and they
Wasn't
still
pretty?
had their mics on too.
oh no!
So, like,
Oh, no.
when we go back and listen, we're gonna hear them yakking.
Oh no, that's terrible. So on the other side of
Yeah,
the
let's
coin,
not put that in the video.
Sasha and David acted like nothing fazed them at
Yeah.
all. Were they just playing it cool, or were they actually that cool?
David didn't really react that much, and neither did Sasha, because I feel like they're just very strong-minded people.
I don't know
Whether
how to read David ever.
same,
So,
but he was.
that didn't shock me one
He's
bit.
so funny though. At the end, I like cut the music and just had him talk. I'm like, you sound like the worst guy ever. Like, everyone hates you because you're saying
Very
this.
punchable face.
Yeah, he has a punchable face.
Incredible
Number one
punchable
punchable face on our team. And then Sasha's just
I love David.
I don't know, just such a strong-minded person. I feel like that it didn't really
Sasha
faze
had
her.
to show her strength for the team.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I appreciate
Our
her
fearless leader.
She's our fearless leader. So
she came in
couldn't-
here during the blizzard to make sure we could put a radio show on. She had to show her strength.
Yeah.
For the team.
and she did.
I got to ask you. So this was something random that I came across yesterday, and I actually put it on the rundown. And Andrew's like, "What are you talking about?" But you mentioned that you brought up David as the number one punchable face
Mhm.
of our teammates here.
Uh-oh.
I have to ask this. So
Jokingly,
we would
wouldn't
never
punch him. No,
we would
no.
never assault a coworker. There's this guy. I don't even know his name. This random guy bought the Baltimore Sun, the newspaper, right?
Okay.
And he came in and had a 3-hour introductory meeting with the staff. And one of the things he asked them to do was rank their coworkers. And it kind of reminded me of the Dion, like, ranking his kids thing.
Mhm.
And I always wonder in situations like this, like, okay, what criteria are we using to rank these people? If you had to rank your teammates, I'm not going to ask you to.
Whoa.
I'm not going to ask you to. But
I would.
if you had to, we'll get to Andrew. If you had to rank your teammates, would you use most punchable face as your ranking criteria?
That would definitely factor in. I don't know. That's such a vague statement. Like, rank your.
That's
rank,
what I mean.
Rank
That's
your
why
coworkers.
that's
Yeah,
why I
well, it would
wonder.
be work ethic for me.
Okay.
For one, it would be like their personality
Mhm.
as 2, and then extremely punchable face for 3.
Yeah, punchable face I think has to play into it.
Because if
It
you
really
have good
does.
work ethic and
Does it
you
overcome
have
a
a good
punchable face?
personality, you have a punchable face. Like we already found out the most successful people have the most punchable faces. And so there you go.
So my question though is, I think I would just do the people I like the most, if I'm being honest.
Okay, like just your personal favorites.
Yeah, like I would just be totally biased and be like, I like you more than I like you. I've never even really met you because I never go to.
So you're probably at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I'd be at the bottom of everybody's list because they're like, I know he works here technically, but I've never met him.
Yeah, Ravi would never make the top 10
because people are like, I don't even know who this guy is. I've never met him. I'm always here and I'm never at HQ. But I'd probably just go who
You're like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's like, does he really exist? There's like 4 people that work at Hurrdat that have actually met me, and 3 of them are right here.
I wonder what Mike Sauter would say. I feel like he'd be very opinionated in this topic.
Oh,
Mike would give his list.
Oh, Mike would absolutely. Maybe
just right on the show.
Where would Mike Sauter fall on everybody's list? Because you look at Mike Sauter.
He's got a great work ethic.
You look at his work ethic
and a punchable face.
You're like, oh my gosh, Mike Sauter may be like really the champ is here. When he did that against what's it, Chuck in the wrestling match.
Yeah.
But Mike Sauter may have the most punchable face of anybody that we work with.
I really got to be careful on what I say about that. So,
and he knows,
higher than David?
He knows that I want to fight him, so that's okay with me.
He would wrestle you.
You guys are.
He's
the same
already
weight
moving
class.
table. He says it all the time. He's like,
I'll
move the tables. Let's go right now.
No, he would. He would.
Well, you guys are in the same weight class too.
He would kick my butt.
You guys are in the same neighborhood, so that would work out.
He's so much taller than I am, and
he's lengthy.
Yeah, and like I feel like I could
wiry.
evade.
He's wiry.
I feel like I'm a pretty good evader, but it would.
Hey, we never raced.
Like a Darth Evader?
We never did do the race.
I'm
not doing it now.
I still want to race though. Let's do it this summer.
You and Anna
we don't have
wants to
anything to
race?
talk about.
Yeah, well, so Anna wants to race me. She thinks she can beat me in a sprint.
Ooh, what distance are we talking about here?
Well, we could do 60 meter or 100.
Okay.
No shot.
What?
No shot, Anna.
Yes, I will beat you in a race.
No shot.
Anna,
I'll give you track shoes and I'm winning.
What's your athletic background here?
She's a track star.
I ran Division I track.
Okay, so yeah, I think she
For
might
a
beat
year.
you. I think she might beat you.
Okay, so
what were your events? Sprints?
100 and 200. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think she might beat you.
No, I'm beating her.
Yeah,
I love the
it's not even gonna
confidence,
be
but I
close.
think I'm
It's
going
not
to
even
win.
You should
close.
make him run a 200.
No, I'll beat him in 100.
I know, but
see, the longer I run, the better I am.
Ooh, okay.
She's probably quicker off the blocks than I am.
Because a lot of times what you'll see is because I've seen some of these YouTube videos and stuff of people that are overly confident, like our guy Andrew over here.
Uh-huh.
And
hey, I got a hit off Olivia Farrell, so I'd watch out.
You got to dribble her down the first base line.
In fair territory.
When we don't know, and you got booed by 7-year-olds. So
They were going to boo me regardless.
you got the swinging bunt.
I could hit a home run and they would have booed me.
What I see a lot is on the longer sprints, guys run out of gas way faster than they think they're going to, and people that are actually used to doing the sprints finish really strong.
You guys, I'm going to need a parachute like a drag race. That's how fast I'm running.
I think
if we ran a 400, we would both first of all pass
I would
out.
die.
Yeah, I wouldn't even do it.
I would die.
I ran one 400. They had me do it in high school. Meanwhile, I'm a sprinter. Knew I was going to be a sprinter my entire life. And my coach was like, hey, we really need you for the 400. Like, someone he dropped out. I'm like, sure. How do you run it? No one really told me how to run it. I sprinted the first 200. I'm like lapping people. And then it was like tortoise in the hair. I was like dying on the last 200. I could barely move. Tunnel vision. I was like coughing up blood at the end of it. Yeah. So
not great.
Track will humble you. And I plan to humble Andrew.
I think we need to make this happen.
It's not going to happen.
I think
I'm going to humble you.
I think we've got a wild overconfidence over here. We got a Division I track athlete over here.
You don't want to make my head bigger than it already is.
I don't. So I would be very upset if you beat me. Yeah.
I already have to air it out every time I leave the show.
I'm willing.
She's got to put you in the ground. Put you in the ground.
I'm curious to see how fast I am still.
I
don't know if that goes away.
For everyone to see how fast I actually am.
Technically,
people are really underestimating my speed.
You're supposed
right
to peak athletically around 21 to 23 is when technically you're supposed to. That's when your optimal athleticism is.
When you got off of the.
But this
track
is
team.
unfortunately.
I haven't peaked yet.
This is unfortunately when I'm on my downfall right now. I feel like slowly.
So do you still run it all, like just recreation? Like you still like, work out and stuff?
I still work out, lift every day, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't sprint. I don't do sprint drills every day.
Not run sprints a lot. Okay. You're still active though, so
I'm active.
Okay.
I could get back into track shape if you gave me 6 months.
I think we should both.
You can take 6 months. I won't even train, and I'll beat you.
There's no way. Yeah, don't even stretch. Actually, you'll
That's
pull
fine.
a hammy.
That's
You'll pull
fine.
both
I won't
your
even
hammies.
stretch.
I was gonna say
Your
we're
Achilles
gonna,
is gonna pop.
We're gonna see Andrew just grab the back of both of his legs, like he got double snipered, and he's just gonna have like 2 shredded hammies.
Keep talking, guys.
I think.
Let's keep
Listen,
it going.
we're gonna wait till it gets warm, so start training now. You gotta.
I
beat
will.
It. You gotta start getting those sprint drills in. I know I can't beat either of you in a race, so I'm not even gonna. I'm not.
You can be our official.
You could lift.
You can shoot the gun.
well more than I can.
I could be the starter gun
Yep.
guy. That'd be good. What else? I think if we're gonna do something,
I want it to be like a Fast and Furious movie though, where like you're wearing a white T-shirt and you just like take off the white shirt.
I still have my uniform too, so I'm gonna wear full.
you're gonna
uniform.
like go full in. I
Yeah.
like it. Okay.
I'll give you one of my uniforms too if you want to wear it.
Yes, absolutely.
Might be a little tight on you, but
I'm good. I could be drenched in water and still win.
Is there-
I'll run this. I'll run this race soaking wet and still beat Andrew.
Anna, is there anything you think Andrew could beat you in? Like, is track or anything else?
In a running event, is it?
Oh,
is it?
or
is that all
any
you're
track
asking?
and field event.
Yeah, any track and field event.
Did you know I threw a javelin at a meet before?
Ooh.
I can throw a javelin.
I think I
Just
could.
because you've thrown it once doesn't mean you're good. At
Yeah,
it.
but if you don't know how to throw a javelin, you're not gonna be able to
in
throw.
grade school.
Okay.
I think I could get you guys in shot put and discus. I threw
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
think
I don't
I
know.
could do
I
that.
don't know how to do any of that. I don't know. You'd probably be weird. This is not a track event, but I feel like you're a good bowler.
No,
Oh, okay, no.
no, I'm not moving bets.
He does have a. I'm a weirdly good bowler.
Yeah,
face.
you give me that vibe.
I'm really good at like cornhole and water.
Maybe like
That makes
pinball,
Like,
ping pong.
I would beat anybody in washers.
That
Washers?
is the
Okay.
show for
Anybody.
today. We'll be back tomorrow here on a Thursday. Hopefully, we'll have heat tomorrow on Hurrdat Sports Radio.